All right, we're going to call this planning and zoning meeting to order at 4 o'clock. Are y'all ready for the meeting over there? I mean, we're going to call it to order if y'all are ready over there. Y'all ready? First item on the agenda is the minutes from May the 12th. Did anyone that reviewed the minutes have any questions or changes? If not,
I make a motion to approve as presented.
we have a motion to approve. Can we have a second? All in favor, raise your hand. So before we get into the meeting this evening, Drew, I want to make a couple of announcements. We do have a public hearing again tonight, and we want to make these public hearings as fair as we possibly can. We want open deliberation. We want everyone to be heard. But what we would like to do is, if you have filled out a speaker request form to speak, before we start on any one of the items, I don't have any, I'm not in receipt of any request forms.
Not required for a public hearing, Mike.
Okay, I'm talking about before
Got it.
issues. We're going to ask you to speak on the issue that you want to speak on. You're going to be limited to 4 minutes. You can only speak once on the issue, and once you have spoken, we're going to move on, because a lot of these things, we have a lot of interest, we have a lot of speakers, we want to get everybody in. So in the interest of being fair to everyone, that's what we'd like to do. If you are making a presentation, we're going to give you 5 minutes to make your presentation. And I think that would probably be sufficient. So that being said, we're going to go to our first item on the agenda this evening, which is 2A. Drew?
Thank you, sir. This is a preliminary plat for Cibola Trails. This is at Coronado, and just the new street name on here is Cibola Trails and Cibola Vista. This is a 40 single family detached lots, excuse me. We've looked at this through the annexation not too long ago, looking at their preliminary plat. Staff's reviewed this and recommends approval as presented. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, I do have one speaker on this, and this is Miles Jonas.
Hello, my name is Miles Jonas. I grew up in San Antonio, and I went to Camp Stewart for Boys just as a camper counselor, and I remember emailing you before about possibly interning, but I'm not his intern, so sadly, yeah. I won't, but I looked through the outline for this in the summary statement, and it said that there was no traffic report done, right? Or there was no traffic impact assessment, or nothing that had been made as of now. But with the amount of developments that you've thought of, shouldn't I just know? Well, I wanted to know what the what your thoughts were that.
Coronado is a collector street.
Thank
so
you.
it was, yeah, thank you very much. It was designed and built as a collector to handle the adjacent neighborhoods coming onto Coronado and of course out to the arterials. So with the existing road system in place, there should be no additional impact that the road wasn't designed to handle.
Is there someone here for this preliminary plat? Wishes to say anything?
Sir, Mike Wellborn, 631 Water Street with Wellborn Engineering and Surveying. And also we have a owner's representative
Okay.
here also.
We looked at this last year, or earlier this year, I guess. We reviewed this. This is a situation that we, at Planning and Zoning, voted against this. And this went to City Council, and they overruled Planning and Zoning and approved it. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this before we move forward? All right, if we have no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion on this preliminary plat.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor? All opposed? So the motion passes. So we'll move on to, under the public hearing and consideration and action, 3A.
Three A is a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a car wash on Lot 2, Block 1, Starkey Manor 12, more commonly known northwest corner of Junction Highway and Commerce Street. Again, this is a resolution for a car wash. It is within 500 feet of the 100-year floodplain, so it is required a conditional use permit. And here's their drainage areas that they've identified. As you can see, it's just under 500 feet from the adjacent floodplain across Junction Highway. There's the full site plan of the development. You have Junction Highway to the left side of the screen, Commerce Street on the lower part of the screen. There's the actual site plan of the car wash portion. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan because there is no change in zoning. The conditional permit is required for a car wash due to the proximity of the 100-year floodplain, based on the water recirculation systems interior to the car wash. Staff doesn't have any concerns with the drainage of the car wash impacting the floodplain. They've got their drainage calculations that they've worked on with their engineer. That'll go through a third-party drainage review through the development process as they move on into permitting. But at this point, staff recommends the conditional use permit for approval. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
So we will open the public hearing at 4:07. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this issue? I do not have a speaker signed up. So there is no one to speak, so I will close the public hearing at 4:08. So the reason for the conditional use permit is because of the proximity to the river,
To the floodplain.
floodplain?
So the zoning code, through several different land uses, does require a conditional use permit based on proximity to the floodplain. Get back to that map real quick. Maybe. A lot of these uses are based on automotive type uses, car wash, automotive shops, automotive part stores, mechanic shops, and so on, that may have an environmental impact on the adjacent floodplain. So it's within the proximity of that floodplain that requires it to come before Planning Commission and City Council. Kyle, is there anything you wanted to add?
Any questions, any comments, gentlemen?
Mike, is it too late for me to say something?
Nope. Step up.
Pablo Brinkman, 3928 Oak Park Drive. Good afternoon. I represent Smitty's Car Wash, which is currently under contract for a listing with at the old City Hall, and we're zoned by right to do the exact same thing. And we also closed 2 weeks ago at the Long John Silver site, so we'll have two sites that are zoned by right. We're also under contract with the site on Highway 16 that is in Fredericksburg, and so all Smitty's people will be able to wash wherever they want. So we've, the group I represent is Lufkin. They've grown up coming here, floating down the rivers, being a part of it, and you'll see their ads in the paper, but they're excited to have these two locations, of which the track that I have under contract right now that Bruce represents is very similar to this in shape at the old City Hall, and they're excited to turn that into a premier multi-million-dollar car wash, just like they're gonna do right across the river. So just wanted to point that out, that those are zoned by right, and we're rocking and rolling.
Thank you. Is the owner's rep here, someone here from,
Yes.
I really don't have any questions. My only concern is the fact that it's It's a car wash that's requiring a conditional use permit because of the floodplain.
Right, so that, again, the base zoning does allow it, because, again, we have a list of several uses adjacent to floodplain that require conditional use permit, so that we have that additional review of any impact on the floodplain. The car wash is required, a recirculation system within the car wash that goes through a grit trap and into the sanitary sewer. The stormwater runoff that should not go to the sanitary sewer would go to the storm drains, which would be external to the car wash. So your chemicals and oil and everything washing off in the car wash should be contained within the car wash. And then, of course, anything in the parking lot would be standard for any commercial development.
So the only reason for that is this proximity. It's zoned properly for the car wash, it's just the proximity.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Any comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion on this issue.
I'll move
You'll move
to approve.
to approve. We have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We're gonna move on to 3B. Drew?
My clicker under control here. I tried to go to 3C. 3B is a resolution for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on Lot 3, Block 1, Shriner High School Edition, more commonly known as 729 Robinson. This is a conditional use permit for a short-term rental. There were 28 letters mailed out to adjacent property owners. Sign was posted and then advertised in the Daily Times on May 12th. This is a one-bedroom house, so it only required 2 off-street parking as per short-term rental and as per a single-family home. And the standard conditions are recommended in your backup. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing, and I believe the applicant is here.
Okay, I'm gonna open the public hearing. I don't have anyone. I'm gonna open this public hearing at 4:13. I don't have anyone signed up. If anyone wishes to speak on this issue. Were there any responses from the neighbors, Drew, in opposition or support of this?
No,
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see any.
The owner is here? Why does this gentleman look familiar?
Matt Sletton, 324 Clay Street, Kerrville, Texas.
So you are the owner or the owner's rep?
I am the owner of this particular one.
So you're pretty experienced in this, aren't you?
We're getting there, yes.
So I've always asked the owners the questions of reference to management and accessibility in case there's issues, and I know you do this yourself.
Yes, yeah. It'll be technically managed by our short-term rental management company, that of course has a staff of 3 people.
Yes, sir.
Plus a couple dozen 1099 independent contractors.
I looked at it, is it a vacant home right now, or
It
is
is
it?
currently vacant, yes.
So you guys are planning, I'm assuming, on doing some renovations and upgrades?
Yes, yeah, if approved, we would be undergoing one set of renovations. If not, we'd be undergoing a different set.
I'm gonna close the public hearing if no one wishes to speak, and the owner's here if you guys have any questions or
Do you
anything.
plan to renovate the garage as part of your upgrade?
The garage will remain a garage,
Okay, so it would be a parking
yes.
place?
The one bedroom, correct?
Yes.
Requires 2 parking
Yeah.
spaces?
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm very familiar with this gentleman, and I have no questions. Any other questions? And if there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion on this.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, this motion is approved. Thank you very much. Good luck. So we're gonna move on to 3C. Man, it's quiet in here.
It's a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at lots 2 and 3, Block 2, Virgil Merrill 3, more commonly known as 1203 Donna K Drive. There's the aerial there, you can see the house. Don't believe there are any within, and these maps are about a quarter mile wide, just for scale for you. As you can see from the survey, this is sitting on 2 lots with the circle drive and the long drive back to the garage in the rear. They've got ample parking. This is a 3-bedroom house requiring a minimum of 4 parking spaces. And again, standard conditions as we've talked about, recommended for
It has a
approval.
pool, Drew, is that correct?
According to the survey, yes, sir.
I didn't see it. I drove by and took a look at it.
So I didn't look at the aerial.
So there,
Yes.
let me open the public hearing on this at 4:16, and I do not have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this issue?
Lady
And,
on the left.
yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Lynette Cooper. I live on Donna K Drive. Is this going to be a bed and breakfast for 10 people, is which I have been told by the property owners?
Is the owner here?
Yes, sir.
Can you, maybe you, I could answer that, but I'm not going to.
Hello. No, from my understanding, the requirement says that we cannot have no more than 10 people. We have 3 bedrooms in the house that we are looking to have available for people, but I expect it to be actually less than 10 people for the most part, just a family size.
So it's going to be like a bed and breakfast? And
Just
how do
where-
you accommodate 10 cars if 10 people come in and rent it?
We do have ample parking. We have several parking spaces you can see on the map here where it comes in, how it curves around down to the garage. We can fit 3 or 4 cars actually parked comfortably inside, along with all of the cars around the curb and the inside of our driveway. However, I don't expect that of those 10 people, each individual person would have a car, but if they did, we do have ample parking for that. However, we only are able to have, or required to have parking for each bedroom, is my understanding, plus 1 person for the management who's not living on site.
So was there a traffic study done on this property? Because Donna K is like a freeway every day of the day. If you live on Donna K like I do, people go 50, 60 miles an hour down that street.
There are some people, yes, ma'am.
And I've been told by the traffic division that I can have them install an armadillo on that street to see that. And during the school time, it is a cut through from Lytle Street down Donna K. And there's been people that won't even walk anymore on Donna K. So the traffic is horrendous.
Well, this does not require a traffic study. This is a residence, and so that, I hope that answers your question. I don't know, Drew might address this more than I, but I don't know what the,
So the,
I don't know what the traffic impact is gonna be, whether someone lives in the house full-time or not, so.
right, I think it'd be fairly comparable, at least daily traffic, whether it's occupied as short-term or long-term. We do have, as one of the recommended conditions, that the 1 space, or excuse me, get the right one here. Part of their guest notification is to encourage the guests to park off-street. So it would be parking on the private property on the driveway. As traffic on the street, having fewer cars at the curb side would be reduction of that impact.
Are you planning on managing this yourself, ma'am?
Yes, sir. And we're just barely starting, so this is actually our primary residence, and it would be kind of a more of a part-term thing, as my husband often works out of town. So we would be able to go with him and leave that rental available, but still use that as our primary residence.
Okay, so this will be a primary residence and rented whenever you're not there, is it?
That's right.
Any other questions, guys? I'm gonna close the public hearing at 4:20. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If there is no one else to speak on this issue, I would entertain a recommendation on this motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. This motion is approved. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. We done?
Not quite.
All right, we're gonna move on to 3D.
Need to check my lettering. I've got 3G, but same case. An ordinance to change the zoning from an R1 to a planned development district on approximately 487 acres out of the David Sechard survey, Nathaniel Hoyt survey, John Southmaid survey, Aloysius Clark survey, and Norma P. Schweitzer survey. This property is more commonly known as 2550 Bandera Highway and 2601 Medina Highway. Let's go through a couple slides here. Of course, this is the case that we continued from last month, so we have heard the applicant's full presentation. They do have a short presentation for you today as well, following staff report. So this would be considered a Kerrville 2050 item. Excuse me, here we go. This project answers quite a few of the different criteria and different concepts within the Kerrville 2050 plan. The Kerrville 2050 plan, the comprehensive plan obviously covers more than just land use. This project specifically looks at 2 or 3 chapters, land use, housing, and mobility as part of their criteria that they use to create the project. Starting first with the planned development district, just kind of reading the purpose statement or a portion of the purpose statement from the zoning code. The PD district is a zoning category that allows unique and innovative use of land and design techniques to further the city's development goals. PD zoning allows the applicant to create combination of uses, structures, open spaces that would not otherwise be permitted by the established regulations. Utilize flexible design techniques to take into account the adjacent properties, the needs for the future occupants and the users of the planned development, and emergence of new trends, mitigate the impacts of the new construction, protect existing natural assets such as the river and hill country views, and promote the efficient use of land and public facilities and services, and to further the vision of the comprehensive plan. It's intended to assure compliance of good zoning practices while allowing specific desirable departures from the strict provisions of the current zoning classification. It's not intended to circumvent standard requirements of the zoning, but again, to allow that flexibility for the project. Planned development zoning may be requested anywhere as long as the tract of land is over 5 acres. This request is a good example of a planned development district in that they have a master plan, land use plan, development and site regulations to fulfill the development's proposal through their design techniques and concepts. So, as far as the comprehensive plan, in general, we do look at the comprehensive plan for our zoning recommendations to make sure the zoning in place follows the policies within the comprehensive plan. That's not just limited to the future land use plan. Again, the housing chapter, one of the quotes from the comp plan, ideally a mix of housing products will be configured in a synergistic manner that encourages an integration of age groups and income levels. When effectively integrated, these mixed income housing developments yield higher values and more sustainable on a longer period of time. And a couple little snippets from the housing chapter. The mixed-use development offer live, work, play environments for working people of all ages. And that's the one on the lower left that shows more of the development up front to the street, multi-story developments. And then the other side, cottage homes like the ones pictured above proved particularly or especially popular with the community members during the Kerrville 2050 process. So as our consultants worked with the community input, they had several different pictures of development types, and these were 2 that garnered quite a bit of interest from the community, and that's 2 of the types of product that the applicant's looking to put in the planned development district. I had one more, excuse me. Moving on to mobility, we've talked about the thoroughfare plan. This does incorporate the arterial that is proposed to connect Highway 16 to Highway 173 as a primary arterial, and you see the cross-section there showing a 100-foot right-of-way with a 4-lane divided road, which is what they've proposed. On land use, the strategic areas that were identified on the future land use plan went through a series of public hearings with the community to build the comprehensive plan. As they looked at those preferred scenarios and established the catalyst areas, it wasn't with the intent that those catalyst areas are the only areas to be developed, but that there would be other market-driven development that would come, may include annexation, may include infill or greenfield lots such as this one. The land use plan strongly underscored the value of compact growth while recognizing that annexation is likely to occur for some developments on the city's periphery. And public feedback process provided a great deal of guidance in shaping that land use plan. And so all that to say, the land use plan itself incorporates a lot of different criteria that are beyond just the map and the specific place types that are engaged. The goal of the future land use plan is not to dictate the manner in which growth occurs in Kerrville, but to provide a framework and general pattern of development. To support the growth at the time is right and not create obstacles. Here's the land use plan, and then on the right-hand side, a zoom in of the area that we're talking about today. As you can see, the 11 different catalyst areas kind of bubbled out in blue that don't have any color to them. Those have specific land use place types for those areas as they're developed. The remainder of the land use plan was largely carried over from the previous plan, with the exception of the area outside of the current city limits. There it is through our GIS system. So the 2008 plan actually categorized this area as planned development district. One of the changes we made from the 08 comprehensive plan to the Kerrville 2050 plan was removing planned development as a future land use. Because as you guys know, planned development, they come through with their customized zoning based on their project. It's not specifically calling out any particular land uses. So we took the PD designation off of the future land use plan, and as a placeholder, the agriculture and outdoor tourism and the rural living were placed on much of the areas undeveloped outside of the city. Oh, too far. So you can see the ring around the city that is all designated as ag. Those are largely undeveloped properties. The areas designated as rural living are subdivided into 5, 10, 15 acre tracts of land. Where I get to zoning. Come on. Sorry, these pictures are large, so it's slow. As you can see, the frontage of this property along 173 is part of that catalyst area number 10, which was identified by the community as a catalyst of development along 173 for those vacant properties. Here's a map of the adjacent zoning. To the north, you have Kerrville Shriner Park, and the south end of the property that we've referenced as Vintage Heights, both zoned R2 and public and institutional. The western portion of this property is currently in the city limits zoned R1. That northeast southwest section of the property is pending annexation with city council, awaiting the zoning recommendation from this meeting, and that would butt up against Comanche Trace, which is zoned planned development district as well. There is still another holdout, two holdout properties in between Comanche Trace and a portion of this property. And here is their land use plan as we discussed, starting at the top of this top breakout piece here. This is mixed use along 173, moving into R3, R2, and that match line comes here. Got another mixed use portion here, R3, is that R2? Excuse me. R2 for the balance of the property. Mixed use here at their internal intersection with the arterial and their internal collector. Mixed use around the little ellipse area, and mixed use up here in the corner adjacent to the park and the adjacent property. You'll notice this additional hatched area. They have included since the last meeting a separate section within the PD regulations for R2 estate lots, and I'll let them kind of go into those details of what those specifics are. So you'll see in your backup as well with the development standards, they did update these from the last meeting, showing again that R2 estate district. They've actually removed the C2 and C3 districts. They're gonna use mixed use for all of the commercial and mixed use areas. And with that, I'd actually pass it over to the applicant.
We'll do this before we open the public hearing.
Martin, can you pull up the other presentation?
Yeah. You ready?
It's PowerPoint, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Should go a little smoother than that.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's nice to be here again. We have, as Drew, I think, pointed out, visited and spent time with the planning department and Drew's team going over the comments that were made during the last hearing. We're here to present our responses and address those comments, which we will get to shortly. One of the things I wanted to touch on before our master planner really gets into the detail is really the intention of what this project is about. And the intention, I think, reinforces what the Kerrville Strategic 2050 Plan is about, which is about presenting and providing affordable housing and attainable housing within Kerrville. That is the nature and the basis upon which this project has been contemplated. It is not a monolithic series of homes that is intended to be developed over 500 acres, and in fact, it is a series of neighborhoods that are there for the purpose of providing different market opportunities for the demand that exists in Kerrville, which is, as you all know, and as we know, significant. Kerrville has a significant housing shortage. That shortage is not being met. It is causing a problem with respect to the economics that drive Kerrville as a community and community growth within Kerrville. It's affecting the Kerrville school system. It's affecting the major employers in Kerrville, which you understand and you know about. And we, in turn, in keeping with the understanding of what the needs are in Kerrville, approach this project from the point of view of what we can do to be integrated within the community and what we can do to help. To that extent, we hired CDS, which actually was the strategic consultancy that the city hired to do the 2050 plan. They, in turn, did an analysis, a market feasibility study for our project. And I'll simply read to you the first two paragraphs of what their study report, or their executive summary has said with respect to this project. And it's very straightforward, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Haskell, who will walk you through the detail. Specifically, they said, based on information provided to CDS by Triple Root, such as concept plans, product location, development layout, and proposed amenities, it is of the opinion of CDS that the Reserve, which is the name of our project, may very well be one of the best dollar-for-dollar housing developments in the state. This is based upon a very high level of planning and design of the Reserve, which, to the knowledge of CDS, has not been attempted at this scale or intensity anywhere in Kerr County or any of the nearby surrounding counties. So we are doing our very best by bringing the assets and the attributes of a professional team to try to develop products that address the needs of the community. We are not putting in something that we feel is foreign to what the community needs and what we believe the market will be accepting of. And we appreciate your favorable consideration. I'll turn it over to Mr. Haskell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, good afternoon. It's good to see you all again. We took what you said seriously. For those of you not in attendance, a couple weeks ago, we had a similar presentation, had an overview. Board members asked us a variety of questions, and to the extent we could, I better not have this problem again. Okay, Drew. All right, so the objective for this afternoon was to provide responses to the questions raised by this board. And again, to the extent that we could, we went out of our way to do so and not dodge any bullets and just be as direct as we could. Yeah, maybe this is suffering a little bit because of big PowerPoint slides. We've got some pretty hefty images. So we broke this into a handful of categories. that we wanted to address that we thought would cover the questions that have been raised to us during our previous presentation. We start with this comment to create a cohesive, highly walkable community. So for this, we'll bring forward a discussion on the community forum and organization. So what that means is how was this place designed and what we were thinking and where would we see it going in the future? To protect the site's natural topography and be a good neighbor. This is a specific question addressed to some of our neighbors who asked questions, which I think is fair enough. What is being proposed adjacent to us? So we've got a section that talks to that. We note to introduce innovative housing types and densities to embrace well-known housing types. So this is the response to the question that we received during our previous discussion about variances and the specific questions about how lots would change, what we were asking for, but more of a why we were asking for those changes and what the implications might be. So we'll start again with this discussion of concept development. So what we did was we backed down, we geared down a little bit from the previous presentation, and by that I mean we discussed before, we take a land-based approach to community planning, which means we go out and walk around the site, we look at the topography, look at the vegetation, look at the drainage ways, and rather than saying we're going to just figure out how to bulldoze over all that, we took a different approach, and the different approach was to say, we've got a very attractive landscape, how can we work within this landscape to develop a plan? So if you look at these 4 steps, the idea is site analysis and green network. So that's where we do look at our slopes, we look at our drainage ways, we understand what the physical characteristics of the existing site are. Then take a look at defining districts and centers. So that's to say you look at the landform, understand what's out there, and from that, draw your conclusions about where places might be. Number 3, connect these districts and centers. You know, we need roads, we need paths, we need all sorts of infrastructure, so that's how you tie it all together. And once you've looked at all of these, you hit number 4, which is this idea of establishing a composite. So that's the overarching vision for the layout. So I will not belabor these. We looked at this a little before. Turns out the site is pretty darn complex. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to really see too far onto the site. If you're down on Highway 173, you can be fooled and think, oh, it's flat, piece of cake, easy development. On the other hand, if you look at it from Highway 16, you're going to see that is not the case at all. There is rolling terrain and topography, and there's several drainages. So we mapped all those out. From that, this is a relatively simple drawing, but it's an important drawing. You can see the blue areas. There were questions before about the drainage ways on the site. We went ahead and mapped all those. So we've got the center line of the drainage, and then we've got a setback on the sides of the drainages. And then those orange and red areas, those are the areas that are really steep. And they're so steep that we said we're not even going to fool around with those. We shouldn't develop up there, period, so we're not going to. Time for a Pepsi ad. Okay, so then when you get into the site planning, what are the implications of what we just discussed? When you're in the areas that are steeper, we are proposing lower levels of density. So for example, adjacent to the neighborhood to our east, or I guess southeast, over at Comanche Trace, guess what? That's an area where we would likely have, or what we're proposing, lower density development. And specifically, we're proposing this lower density development because on our side of the site, on our site, there's steep and rolling hills. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to try to intensify development there, just because it would require quite a bit of grading, and it would just be a mess. It would not be good for our site. Whereas flatter areas, there are portions of the site that are pretty darn flat. In those areas, we could increase density. So there's this segmentation of density across the site that's driven by landform. And then we also thought, well, let's look at the reserve in the context of the larger community. And what we did was we searched out maps to show what's going on nearby. And we can see there is development proximate. We're clearly surrounding a portion of the Shriner Park. But again, on another side, on our east side, we've got a well-established community. On our west side, we've got an established community and a proposed community. So we seem to be in the line of where development is occurring. And if we zoom in on that a little bit more closely, we can begin to see what we're actually discussing. So you can see in this diagram, and we'll blow this up so you'll see it a little bit more closely as we move along. You can see the reserve community adjacent to the Shriner Park, the connection to Highway 16, Highway 173, again, the adjacency to our neighbors. And then if we blow it up a little bit more and begin to characterize what we're describing, as Nick pointed out earlier, this is foreseen to be a mixed-use community with a variety of different types of neighborhoods. And those neighborhood types can range from, again, estate lots to mixed-use development to a variety of different lot sizes and types woven together. And, a big part of the message there is indeed being able, yes, we are trying to cater to many segments of the community, but do it in a way that's integrated. So we don't have a pod of this over there and a pod of that over there. No, you might have a townhouse that's across the street from a single-family home. And that's on purpose. It's not by accident. And it's done to create neighborhoods that provide opportunities, but at the same time done in a way that makes sense relative to the site. And you'll also see, gosh, we've got parks. As we look into, if we bring this diagram up to another higher level, the area, I don't know if does this have a laser pointer? No. Okay, that's okay. The southern portion of the site, the yellow area with the green stripes, that's the area that we've defined as estate lots. And you can see within that, there's a pretty big portion of the site that is the estate lot neighborhood. You can see up on the top that comment where it says Vista Park. Well, that was one of those areas on the previous diagram that we shared with you that we said it was too steep. It is. It's steep. It's not a place for development, but it's a pretty good place for a path and a trail to get you on top of the hill so you get a nice vista. That makes sense. As you look within the community, you'll see those green stars, for lack of a better term. Those stars are organizing open space elements that neighborhoods are built around or surrounding. And you'll also see those are distributed. And the point to that is, we realize this is a big site, part of it's pretty long, and you want to be able to have a nice lifestyle, whether you're in the big estate lots or whether you're in a townhouse. It should not matter. It's a different lifestyle, but they should be attractive and positive lifestyles. And the last meeting we were at, the chairman of the board asked a little, I think fair enough, well, what exactly are you guys talking about? Well, at this point, we don't have tentative maps. We haven't plotted the whole thing out, but we've been studying it closely. And we've been studying it closely enough to begin to say, if you look at the community as we've shown it, what you can see is, again, the estate area, and hopefully you can all discern from that drawing, the estate area, those are large lots. They're big lots, they're in rolling terrain, and we'll get into what they actually look like in a minute, but the idea is those are big lots, they're surrounded by open space, and in this case, they're vineyards. But as you get into some of the other neighborhoods, the places we define as traditional neighborhoods, those indeed look like the neighborhoods that you see around Kerrville today. You see around a lot of different cities today. Some of those are bigger lots, some of them are smaller lots, some of them are townhomes. But hopefully what you can see in that drawing, or what you can see through enough, is none of them are separated from one another. This is, again, as Nick had said, a community of neighborhoods. And the neighborhoods are sewn together, they're not separated. Take a little breather here on my little roll. As we then get into planning context, this is the question that we had in the previous work session in regard to the relationship to our neighbors. So, you can see that area with that black dashed line. During the previous work session, we had a pretty good discussion about that, and we tried to answer the questions, but we didn't anticipate that those would be the specific questions of the group. But from that work session said, what is proposed for the estate areas? What are the setbacks proposed? Will the proposed project avoid flood areas? So we thought, all right, we'll take those on directly. So we did a couple little blow-ups of those areas. And we tried to address that. So what we did, and we're not playing games here, our civil engineer, we mixed and matched a little bit. We took some of the design work that we've done along with some of the civil work, and we married these two together. So on the right-hand side of this photograph, you can see a kind of on the far right, a general aerial photo of this area. Immediately adjacent to the property line of the proposed project and the existing community, that's a photo rectified aerial survey. And what that means is, our civil engineers did that. That's not me fooling around on Google Earth. That's a correct aerial survey. And then adjacent to that, in AutoCAD, we placed a theoretical layout. Well, what if we put a layout next to it? And the purpose of that was to hopefully illustrate to this community, to give people some peace of mind. You know, you're curious, well, what's happening? Well, one of the base rules that we've got is, you can see where we say 300-foot minimum. So that means the face of curb on the road on the reserve side, so where the houses are, is at least 300 feet from the property line to the adjacent community. And like I say, at least, because in some areas it stretches out and it gets wider. The orange dot is indicative of what's called a building envelope. So a building envelope is when you're on a steep or rolling lot, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to have some of the setbacks that you have don't reflect the physical qualities of the site. So instead you put in a building envelope and you say, you're sloping downhill, so put the house in the better place. So those orange dots represent where houses would go. The green area, we say vineyard/open space. We're currently working with a vineyard operator to get an understanding of how you grow grapevines. I'm not a viticulturalist, I'm a neighborhood guy. So we talk to a viticulturalist and we find out exactly where that is. But in any event, between the property lines and the homes would be either a vineyard or open space, not houses. There's no circumstance under which that's houses. And then you can see to the right, we also just went ahead and measured. Said, well, how far are houses on the other side? I was curious. So you can see kind of at the bottom of this drawing, those lots are about 230 feet deep. In the middle, it's about 311. As you work your way to the north, they get a little narrower again, down to 245, and then ultimately down to 175. So you can see the majority of our lots are indeed this 300 foot. There's an area, you can see where it says approximately 175 to the left. There are some lots that are about 140 feet deep. And we're proposing lots that are a little bit more shallow because the landform is a little more gentle. It's a little flatter. It's more suitable for development. But it's still a pretty big lot. That's, say, I want to say it's 120 by 140, so that's a pretty good sized lot. And then this is kind of a technical drawing, but it is indicative of what we were just describing in terms of property lines. On the figure on the right, again, shows this is, again, provided to us by our surveyor, so it's all legit. We put the property lines over the photo rectified aerial survey and then wed that to the aerial photo. So what all that technical words means is you can begin to see how the two neighborhoods relate to one another. You can see the property lines on the reserve, and then you can see that red dashed line, or hopefully you can. I don't know if people can pick up that fine red line. That's about indicative of where the backs of homes would end in the reserve, and then the open space goes back to the adjacent property line. Okay, we'll keep rolling. Another subject that we covered last week, or the last session, had to do with variances requested. And I think this was this is clearly a fair question, because what we're proposing is a fairly complex community. This is not just a run of 6,000 square foot lots. There are a variety of different lots, and the variety requires some thought. And you have to put together some special conditions to bring these together, such as my mystical powers to turn slides. I'm working on strengthening that as we go, and I think we're getting a little better here. So the reason we're asking for variances, it's not to be a troublemaker, it's not to come into town and ruffle everybody's feathers. It's because we're really serious about this vision. The idea that this is planned to be a serious community that is doing something that's interesting and innovative. And in order to do that, we needed to ask for some changes to the current code to address particular problems of design. So there are reasons behind things. We're not randomly doing this. I guess my mystic powers are a little slower. So part of the reason, again, as Nick had alluded to earlier, the discussion of segmentation. Well, what does that mean? Let's be really clear on what that means. There are the opportunities, again, for low-density estate homes in those hills. And that is a real goal that we want to pursue, so check. But there are also some really interesting opportunities for mid-level densities, where the lots are a little smaller and houses are organized in a slightly tighter manner, to this idea of community living, where we've got cottages built on courtyards. Multifamily homes, yes. Yes, maybe there are some townhomes. We're suggesting there are some towns, bringing together, again, a higher density housing type. There's the opportunity for mixed use. And we've got the two lower photographs together, mixed use and commercial, because the two really belong together in the context of this discussion. That's saying there might be a ground floor coffee shop, maybe there's a ground floor gallery, maybe a consultant opens up his design practice downstairs. But then upstairs, you can have an office space, or you can have a townhome, or you could have a flat or an apartment, whatever it ultimately turns out to be. But there are very focused areas where we're proposing this, and it's very intentional. So, as I alluded to before, within all of the different types of housing, all the different densities that we're looking at, there are unique solutions. This is not it's not like one of those baseball hats that's one size fits all. It does not work like that. We actually have to take the time to focus on each of the different lots, think about who we're trying to sell a house to, think about what the quality of those neighborhoods are, and then put together recommendations and guidelines for each. So within the project, design guidelines and CCNRs will be established, defining the requirements for each housing type. So that's a fundamental here. So as we get rolling, there would be CCNRs, covenants, codes, and restrictions, which mean the design guidelines for neighborhoods. So when someone comes in to build a townhouse or an estate house, they have to follow some guidelines and they have to follow the rules that we're setting. This occurs through each of the neighborhoods. It's not exclusive. There's a note in the middle of this because there was a comment made before with some concerns about zero lot lines and how all that works. And to be very clear, there's a building separation for all of the different housing types that we're looking at, no matter what the densities are. So that means even if you've got, and we'll talk about this in a minute, if you've got a higher density housing product, it is physically separated from the neighboring unit, period. And the minimum setback is 10 feet, but as you get into townhomes, it gets wider, and then if you went to commercial uses, they're wider as well. But there's always a setback. And the phrase, the zero, we'll get into that in a minute, but the zero lot line scenario is about addressing specific problems that come with higher density lots that you just need to be aware of as you move ahead. If we look at these estate and traditional lots, we intentionally kind of mix these pictures and a drawing. Number one, right off the bat, we say no zero lot line housing types in this category. That is clear. That's no. Absolutely none of these would have that condition. On the other hand, there are lots, you can see that drawing on the far right. A lot of the areas got steep hillsides, and to work on a steep hillside, well, you can bulldoze the top of the steep hillside, but that's not what we want to do. We want to leave the steep hillside as a rolling hill and then establish custom homes that work their way up and down those hills. To do that, you need these guidelines. So that is the scenario for the estate and traditional lots. There was a question specifically directed to us before about what were called zero lot line homes. And to try to clarify this, we searched and tried to find the most ideal picture, to be very clear on what we're describing here. To start this discussion, as you get into higher density housing types, there are different building typologies that come to light, or different building configurations that come to light. Some ways to handle a higher density single family house is to alley load it, and we do that in some of these. But there are some people and some situations that don't want to have an alley for whatever reason. It can be, again, a design solution or a market solution. There are situations where that doesn't make sense. On the other hand, there is sometimes still the demand in the marketplace for just a smaller lot. And how do you do a smaller lot, single family home that's traditional, meaning you drive off the street into your driveway, into your garage? And we're pursuing this option to address, somewhere on there, it says, right in the middle there, allows for architecture forward. We don't want a scenario where when you go down the street, have tiny lots, and the only thing on the street are garage doors. And then you've got to scurry around the garage door to get in the front door of the house. We don't think that contributes to an attractive neighborhood. And instead, we've looked for design solutions to allow for what is a pretty traditional lot and a pretty traditional house. But to make this work on the small lot, we've got to ask for that zero lot line scenario. And I'm not sure whether, we tried to clarify on this image, and I'm happy to elaborate on this if it makes sense. Or we can come back to it, in this, when we wrap up. Similarly, there's the same scenario for at least one of the smaller lot alley type homes that we're looking at. I'm not sure how to best address this. It turns out we're learning there's some discussion about the rear elevation of these alley-loaded homes and how the rear of the home actually works. The way these homes work is the pictures on the left are indicative of the street scene. So if you go to visit your friend's house or your own house or whatever, your front door is always on the street. We want the street to look like a traditional and inviting neighborhood street with a sidewalk, a curb separated sidewalk at that. So there's some sort of a little planted area, there's a sidewalk, there's a tree. And when you go up to visit your friend's house or your own home, you go up your steps, into your porch and into your home, and you're good to go. The reason that works like that is because your garage is parked in the rear of the house. So if you look in the photo on the lower right, that's the rear elevation of the same home as what you see on the left. To make that work at the right density, you wind up having this alley situation in the back, and that's what that cross section shows. So what we're saying is on the left-hand side of that section is one building. On the right-hand side of that cross section is another building. They're always 30 feet apart. Within that 30 feet is an alley, and that's shown right there at 20 feet. And 20 feet is a fire requirement. It's a national fire requirement. Fire apparatus need a 20-foot road to move back and forth. We have seen scenarios where that 30 feet gets narrower, and if it gets narrower, it doesn't matter whether you're here in Texas driving a big Ford F-350 or you're in some other city driving a little rinky-dink car, people will turn off the alley and crash into the wall. I can almost guarantee it. When those alleys get narrow, they do not work. So we push it out to 30 feet. And at 30 feet, there's enough room for most vehicles to safely turn in and out of the garage and function. And that's a 2-car garage, so each of those units gets 2 cars, and you can park your Prius next to your F-350, and both sides of the household will be happy. You'll be good to go. These units we also show, though, a request for a zero lot line configuration on a side yard. And that's not something that's required. That's something that, from our point of view, is an aesthetic call. And by that I mean, if you've got a narrow house, and then you've got a 5-foot setback on both sides, that means you've got side yards that are 5 feet wide and a fence. Well, that means you and your neighbor both have a 5-foot side yard. And a 5-foot side yard does provide separation, but it doesn't do much in terms of being able to put out chairs or sit or whatever. So what we propose is, say, on one side of the building, it's actually not a zero lot line, it's called a reciprocal easement. And that means that on one side of each of the properties, the side yard is always 10 feet. It's 10 feet clear. So instead of putting the fence down and dividing it, you make a reciprocal easement with your neighbor. And then you can plant your plants and do whatever you want to do in there, and you just get a wider space. Again, that's not something that's required. It's an aesthetic, but we're advocating. We just think it makes for a more livable community. Yes, townhomes. Townhomes follow characteristically similar guidelines. You can see the photograph on the upper right being that alley situation where the towns are built up to the edge of the alley. They would still be set back 5 feet from that asphalt. So building face to building face for the towns is still 30 feet. What else here about these? Yeah, these have a wider building separation. So this is saying a 15-foot building separation, and that means if you've got a 3-unit townhouse or 4 or 5 or whatever, the space between building 1 and building 2 is always a minimum of 15 feet. These are often built closer to the street, and that's kind of on purpose. Again, back to that slide that we shared in that single-family neighborhood where there's your street, there's a curb-separated sidewalk, there's your street tree, there's a more modest front yard, and then right adjacent to that is your front porch. Let's see if that's, aha. And I think this is last but not least. The mixed-use building. During the last work session, we realized there was a bit of a flaw in our language, and that the language had indicated a request for a 0-foot setback along an arterial road, which was a misnomer. That didn't belong there because we don't have that situation. An arterial road does go through the community, but our little mixed-use areas are not on that road. Our mixed-use areas are within the community. And the request for the 0 setback is for this scenario, as you can see in the upper right, the idea that there is a ground floor shop, there are whatever the uses are above, whether it's an office or, townhouse or gallery or whatever. But the ground floor is built up to the edge, and as you can see, I hope graphically this works. In the lower left-hand picture there, you can see that ground floor cafe or whatever. There's the cafe, and then that yellow dash line is actually the property line of that parcel. That unit is built right up, actually it's just like downtown Kerrville. Actually, I can cut right to the chase on that. It's like downtown Kerrville, where buildings are built up to the sidewalk. If I'm gonna go into your bar, walk into your bar. You don't have a lot of big gaps in separation. And part of the reason for that is, yes, we are advocating a walkable community. So if you live nearby, if you're in the little park and you wanna go to the cafe, you can pretty comfortably walk along the park, cross the street, now you're in the mixed-use area, and walk right into that mixed-use building. That was the purpose of that 0-foot setback on, again, not incorrect. With that, I think I can hand it back to Drew. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for letting us share this.
Chairman, so with that, I can either go through the development standards again, or just the updates that they've made to those standards since our last meeting, or if you're ready for public hearing. It's
Does
commission's
anyone need
desires.
them to go through, when you say that, you're talking about the variances?
Right, the amendments to the code, correct.
Okay. Does anyone need them to go through that?
I think they did a good job showing what those amendments relate to for the housing types and why they're asking for those amendments to the code. Again, it's indicative of a planned development. It is consistent with the Kerrville 2050 comprehensive plan. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
I think maybe what we might do, we have a lot of speakers, before we open the public hearing, if anyone has any questions for the developers, before we start this process, I have a couple of questions. The road development, the thoroughfare development, the connector road between 173 and 16, that's like morphed a couple of times from what I originally understood where it was gonna be, and now it's not gonna be there. My understanding originally was that the thoroughfare was gonna be built. It was gonna be put in concurrent with the development. Now, according to what Drew tells me, you're going to enter from 173 and 16 to a point, and you're gonna cul-de-sac it, and as you further develop, you're gonna finish the road. Is that correct?
Drew, do you want to address that?
So we had talked about the different phasing, and the phasing starting from both ends
Correct.
and building that road as they go. At some point, fire marshal's gonna require that to be connected all the way through before they get to the center. I may not have been clear in that.
Is there a time frame on that, Drew? Is that
gonna
a
be
year,
based on
2
the-
years?
That'll be based on the number of units, the number of residential units built. So the fire code has a maximum number of units that are allowed one access point. Once they exceed that threshold through the plating process, they will have to build that additional connection.
So the thoroughfare will be a process. Otherwise, we're not gonna have a connector from 173 to 16 with the development immediately.
Correct.
Okay.
I'd like to address it as well,
Sure.
if I can. Hi, my name is James McKnight. I'm one of the land use attorneys with Development Group. And to Drew's point, yeah, the idea is to develop the road all the way through. When you typically have development, you look at your rough proportionality, you look at what your development is responsible for, and you do it a piece at a time. Definitely our goal is to build the thing all the way through, but we're looking at different ways of how we're gonna do that. We haven't completely solved that yet, but the idea is definitely to have the thing go all the way, have the road go all the way through. And the phasing is, right now, that's the first point of this, is to say, we're going the first phase, we know we're gonna build that road through, but as we go through this process, you'll see that we're finding a way to get that road all the way through and paid for, really.
So the phasing of this project is still up. I mean, originally, I think, and I don't know, this may not mean anything, but phase one was, if I remember correctly, phase one was the estate lots.
That's right.
Okay, is that when
It's also the panhandle.
All the way down, yeah, so the estate lots and the panhandle. I mean, yeah.
So, help me understand what your plan is. Your plan, the first thing you're gonna develop in there is estate lots?
No,
No.
let me answer the question.
Sure.
It's a function of where the services are.
Good, come on. Good.
So we're balancing a variety of issues, right? The first is the arterial, which is part of the strategic plan, which everybody knows. The other part of it is where the utility is located. So first part is the sewer, the main sewer is on 173. The main water line, on the other hand, is on the back of Shriner Park, right? So in terms of pulling the services into the site, rather than saying, well, they're all on 173 and we're gonna start from 173 and pull them forward, we're actually gonna have to pull the sewer from 173 and then pull the water from back of Shriner Park towards 173, right? So we're kind of working on both sides of it at the same time. So the first part of it is when you go to do the grading, you try to do optimally as much of the road grading and the preparation that you can, and try to rationalize how your utility infrastructure is gonna go, because ultimately, you're doing it in should be a rational, economic way. So what we will do is we intend to develop the panhandle, which is obviously the long linear
Sure,
part.
coming off 173.
Coming off 173, pulling back, and then ultimately, that will be the first phase, coupled with one of the estate's sections, which will be done in phases towards the back end of the property. Now, if we're successful and there's good response, then we will obviously expand the amount of estate lots that we put into the market. But again,
Sure.
no one's got a crystal ball and nobody knows. But to the point that you're making, Mr. Chairman, the entire arterial is absolutely part of the project. It's not stopping or starting. The only thing to be aware of, and I'm sure you are, is that on that portion of the panhandle on the adjacent piece, the arterial splits. So 50% of it is on the land that we are proposing to develop, and 50% of it is on the adjacent property, which is not part of the development. And that alignment and that kind of conversation has been part of what we've been doing with the city and Public Works from the very, very beginning in terms of where it went. Because we altered the location of it. Originally, that was going to be all on Shriner Park, and then Public Works said no, they would prefer it to be on the alignment that it is, and that's how it came to be where it is. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions, guys, for open the public hearing? Okay, we're gonna open the public hearing at 5:09. And, first speaker we're gonna have is Miss Peggy McKay.
Peggy McKay, 103 Westchester. That partially answered one of my questions, which is about, will you do your phasing as you have them numbered, 1, 2, 3? And what's a timeline? What is an anticipated timeline for those first 3 phases?
My partner stepped out of the room, Zachary Godfrey.
We're looking at, the entire development's gonna take 2 to 5 years, is, what we're anticipating. So in that first 2-year period, all you're working on is infrastructure, in that first year period. And then, of course, you're going into the phasing of building out homes and such. Of course, according to the way we're seeing the entire marketplace moving right now, obviously, we are expecting that there might actually be an overlap of some of our phases as we move forward based upon the number of cells and the units that are moving.
Okay, the reason why I was interested in that is the increase in the population in that project, which affects the traffic on the highway. So if the road doesn't connect, anything that's built towards 16's got to go 16, anything on 173 will be 173. And if they're going into town, 173 does have a choice of taking the 534 bridge to connect other roads. Anything on 16 can either go 16, and if they're going to the schools, where are they going to go but River Hill Boulevard, which is going to add a tremendous amount of traffic, and the roadway that's less than 2 years old is already deteriorating. We get 18-wheelers on that road, which is not designed, the base isn't built for a lot of traffic, nor for heavy items. But my concern is traffic. That's not something that you're concerned with as much as we are, because once you get on the other roadways, the state's made no provision to divide the traffic to share that highway. You've got the development near Camp Meeting Creek, which will be 200 units. And this one, I'm guessing, will be somewhere between 200 and 600 in that 300, or that 2 to 3 year period. And those are just units. They're not the number of cars. You can easily double that and then some. But we have no place to take the traffic once they leave their area. The design sounds wonderful, but there's no accommodation for the traffic once they leave there. And the other thing is water. I don't know that we can supply the water for all these large subdivisions, and this is a tremendous amount of people added to one small area. I mean, you talk about the size of Kerrville, if you add 2,000 people, that's a good chunk of Kerrville's population as it increases. The other thing I'm curious about is this property lists the address on Bandera Highway as 2601. Vintage Heights or Medina River Estates lists their address as 2601. They're different owners, different pieces of property now. How can they have that same address? And the reason why I'm concerned about that is when the Camp Meeting Creek property was in planning and zoning or before the city, it was stated that they were number 2 on the highway list for curb cuts and also adding additional traffic to Highway 16. And Vintage Heights kept the number 1 position. If they're number 1 and number 2, what is the reserve going to be? And if that's not been thought about, I don't want to wake up down the road when half their work is done and their investments well along, and they can't get the permits from the state to get on the highway. It just seems like that traffic problem has got to be much more in tune with the development. And I'm not looking to them to do it. I think that's our problem as a city to address that. And I don't think we have, but I still am curious about those 2 addresses. You can't have 2 properties, 2 owners with the same address.
You have answers for that, Drew?
Chairman, we'll answer all the questions at the end of the public hearing.
You got them all written down? All right, thank you, sir.
What did he say?
They'll answer them, Peggy, when we're done, we'll get all the questions and try to answer them when we're done. Tony Macias.
Tony Makedas, 3713 La Cumbre Circle, Comanche Trace. I've just got a few questions I'd like to ask, if I could ask some of the people here.
You can ask them, Tony. I guess we're gonna get them all answered at the end. So just give us your questions and we'll put them in the queue.
All right, you mean at the end, I can't ask them now?
You can ask them, but we're gonna take all
All
the
right,
questions and
here.
try to get them all answered at the end.
All right. This question's for Drew. Drew, was there any incentive from the city to the developer for this development?
That's it. Keep going.
Keep going. That's all right, I'll relinquish my time.
I don't know who I call first. Do I call Ann Maisley or do I call Dave Maisley?
Actually, I don't want to speak, I just wanted to give you the letters, and I apologize. for
We
the
have, I
letters.
think we have the letters,
We
Ann.
did,
They're in the
and I
packet.
apologize,
You're-
but
no
they had
problem.
said I needed to sign up to speak.
You need to go home and rest for tomorrow, or do you want to talk?
No, ditto. Just want to give the letters. Thank you,
I
buddy.
just had a question. I have a
Yes,
question.
ma'am. Step up.
Okay, so. I
Give us
take
your
it-
name and where you live.
Oh, Ann Maisley, I live in Comanche Trace, 3544 La Cumbre Drive. And I'm going blank, but, oh, I know, on all the variances, so they have not removed any of the variance requests that they asked for in the initial meetings. They still want all the same
Yeah,
variances.
I believe that's the case, Ann.
Okay, so I just want to ask, or address the council that, so you want to set a precedence here of all the rules that we've set and all that went into the 2050 and all that went into everyone that devoted time with the city, making up the codes, regulations, ordinances that were voted on. You want to go ahead and set a precedent that in future developments, that those will also be given to future developers. And, you know, that just doesn't seem right. When our city has made those ordinances to make our city better and have quality. And we shouldn't be just ignoring it because we need housing. I mean, this is pretty dense. I mean, when they're talking about that, and I looked up at some of the, and I know this is other countries that they have built in and stuff, but I think you do need to look at everything that they have done. And what assurance do they have to carry through in the US, what they've done elsewhere? We don't really know what's been done because we've not been doing this one. So that's my
Those are
concern.
good questions, Ann. Thank you. Maggie McGee.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. In following the meeting last time and looking at the presentation, I was really pleased at how the developer had looked and studied the 2050 plan and addressed that in their plan for the reserve. My concern is that I live in Comanche Trace. Do I give my address? Do I need to
You
do
don't
that?
have to, just you
Okay.
live in Comanche.
I live in Comanche Trace, and my concern is that there seems to be building in that past meeting and in discussions and talk since, an adversarial atmosphere, which I think is way premature. And my plea is for civility and good old-fashioned, open your ears, listen to the other person, get all the facts before everybody, kind of gets upset about things. I think we ought to get the facts on the table. I think we ought to trust the process. We've got great elected leaders. We've got a great P&Z. They have a process to address and adapt and get questions answered. And I think we ought to let that process play out and respect each other during this entire thing.
Thank you, Maggie. Betty.
Hi, I'm Betty Pace. I live in Comanche Trace on La Cumbre, 3561, building a house. Most of my questions actually have been brought forward, so I'm not going to waste time there. I do want to thank y'all for thinking about this seriously. I think everybody in this room has different reasons why we either like it or are concerned. I appreciate, I was one of the ones that asked for more information in order to decide whether it's something I really want to get behind or if I'm still concerned. I have concerns. I appreciate the information you brought forward. My concerns are still the things we've talked about, water and density, scare me to death for this city. I do have a question that I'd like put in there, if you would. Someone talked about a 30-foot, 300-foot behind La Cumbre. I just want to know what that is. You said open land. I would like that answered for me.
That'll be easy. We'll get that done. Thank you. Michael.
I am Betty's husband. I am also in Comanche Trace because I'm married to her. I will say, once again, these guys have done they're proposing something absolutely gorgeous. Though it seems like a lot of what they're addressing is concerns from people of what's behind my house. Frankly, I don't care. I figure no matter what it is, there's going to be something there anyways. My concern is, what is it going to do to the town? We don't have, you've already got another 1,000 units that's going to be coming on to the market that's under development or being built right now. So that's another 10% of the population. These guys want to build another 1,700 units. It's another 20% of our present population. At what point is it too much? And I'm just thinking, this is a place that would look absolutely gorgeous in Austin, but I don't want to live in Austin. I just want to ask, at what point is there just too much? Is there too much growth in town? And at what point are we going to have the water to be able to support it? It seems that from past history, we've had real problems with the water that we already have, and we're not coming up with any new water. And if we're going to be bringing in another 7,000, 8,000 people across all of the different developments, where is that going to come from? How is that going to impact us? At one point or another, all of these cars are going to end up on the major roads. Most of them are going to end up on Sidney Baker's South to say what Peggy was saying. She's talking about the traffic. There's no way to really support that down there. If we dump another couple thousand cars on that road, it's just not going to do it. It seems that the biggest reason that one of the things the city really wants is this road, but we're not necessarily even going to get that. We'll get it if everything goes according to plan. Well, what if it doesn't? I happened to live in San Antonio years ago, back in the 90s, in what was originally designed to be an extremely large, innovative, just game-changing development. It didn't happen. They started it, and everything went under, and it was up to everybody else to pick up the pieces and finish it, and it was just an utter disaster. And I see the same potential happening here. What happens if they don't? If they aren't able to.
Those are good questions, and we'll try to get an answer to those. Thank you very much. Sean?
Thank you. I've edited my comments to try to hit on several different salient issues. So thank you. I have a background in another industry that might provide some insight into the decision that the committee faces and needs, and I need to provide some backdrop as to where I'm coming from. I'm going to make some points along the way, and I have a couple of recommendations at the end if I can make them. So for those of us who have spent time in the business world, we're well aware that there can be a vast chasm between vision and what actually gets accomplished. The oil and gas industry is quite familiar with the large rewards and the associated risk that comes along with it. And large companies have honed risk to an extremely fine detail. For example, there's floating production platforms in the deepwater Gulf of Mexico that are multi-billion-dollar machines with dozens of wells extending off of them, and each of those wells cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They process vast quantities of highly combustible oil and gas every day without incident. It's rare for them to fail, and when they do, the results can be devastating and long-lasting. Risk itself is a liability and a huge potential cost. We inherently know that. Most of us purchase insurance. We're willing to pay for risk mitigation through health, homeowners, fire, flood, and other insurance, along others. So at the risk of being pedantic, risk is a cost and risk mitigation has value. Many of us are familiar with the Deepwater Horizon disaster. The cost of that disaster was $65 billion, caused by the failure of a cement flood and blowout preventers. Another notable failure was the Texas power grid last year during Winter Storm Uri, due to a few days of extreme weather. That cost was $195 billion, and that doesn't include the loss of life. Another disaster was the space shuttle. That cost $3.2 billion, plus the loss of the crew. And it was caused by the failure of a rubber O-ring that did not expand in cold weather. One of my former bosses, who was an excellent statistician, commented that the loss benefit curves are highly asymmetric. To put that into plain English, you have to work and make everything work out perfectly well for a project to have a success, and you get a decent rate of return. But if small things go wrong, things can go south really badly, and the cost and the long-term ramifications of that going south are huge. So no business starts out with an intent to fail, yet thousands of businesses fail every year. So point number one, and this may sound obvious, but I do think it bears repeating. Failure is a cost, risk has a cost, but risk mitigation has value. Two, given the size of this project, if this developer fails, the ramifications of this failure could be devastating to this area and take years to recover from, if ever. So I do have a question. Has anyone done any vetting of this developer to assess the capability of completing this project? I next want to talk about zoning. I looked up the purpose of zoning ordinances and came up with this definition from Investopedia. Zoning ordinances exist to help cities keep their character as they grow. The way that I see it is that these zoning restrictions are a form of risk mitigation that our community has implemented to ensure that we have the type of development that works for Kerrville. The developer has asked for a substantial number of variances to those rules so for their project that they clearly benefit from them so that maximize the profit that they get per acre. I can understand why they've done so, but if those variances are granted, it opens us up as a community to a substantial amount of risk. And I'm not seeing a single proposal to mitigate that risk. So point number three, if you grant these variances to the developer that he is asking for, you're granting them substantial value and you're taking on the risk of that. This is not a request from the developer. This isn't even a valid business proposal. It's not even a screw you proposal. I look at this as attempted extortion. Another question is whether our zoning laws have any teeth to them, or are they merely suggestions that can be assuaged and rendered moot by any developer that has a good story, a silver tongue, and some pretty pictures. I want to talk about the 2050 plan. We've heard a lot about the 2050 plan. Kerrville's vision for what we want our future to look like. It's 325 pages long. Clearly, the Kerrville community has put a tremendous amount of work into it. Does it even matter? The developer's proposal is very high density, mixed use development in a area of low density development. You have to get pretty creative to be able to shoehorn this high density development into the 2050 plan for an allowable place type of rural living, estate residential, professional services, agriculture, and outdoor tourism. I understand the planning director, Mr. Paxton, had to make a recommendation to the commission about proposed developments. The default and easiest position is to approve development. Mr. Paxton devoted a paragraph of almost 300 words that had to really time itself into press justifying its consistency with the 2050 plan. If it was consistent with the 2050 plan, it could have been done with many fewer words and would have been obvious to everybody here. So, my question is, are we gonna let a developer who is not from this area and live here dictate what our community looks like, or are we? Thank you. My two recommendations. I propose that the city annex this piece of property as soon as possible. I know that there are taxes associated with it, so I would propose that you defer taxation until the land use changes. The second is I ask the committee to reject this developer's proposal for zoning variances until they're fully understood and the developer and the city have implemented mitigation that covers the downside risk of these variances. Thank you.
Chris
Broughton.
Broughton?
That's
Thank you. I'm Chris Broughton. I live at 411 Spring Mill in River Hill. I wanted to show to my leadership Kerr County colleagues that I was listening in the water class. I don't think water is going to be that big of an issue because didn't we just get finished pumping 1 billion gallons with a B back into the ground? So I don't think water is going to be that big of an issue. Also, my wife and I recently moved here from Frisco, Texas. Those of you that know the Dallas-Fort Worth area know that Frisco is a very big, thriving metropolis. I think we have 10 5A high schools now, or we did. And so I'm familiar with this type of development. Heck, we have one of these once a quarter, at least. And so when I view this presentation, and I view the developer, I agree, I would like to know a lot more about the developer, but when I view this, this is really my cup of tea because I lived it. We went from a 2-lane farm road to a 6-lane thoroughfare on the road that I was adjacent to. And so, first off, I support this development. I think development is coming, whether we like it or not. Master plan developments such as this, with mixed uses, are the ideal scenario rather than a hodgepodge of multiple developments of smaller size strewn together. You get consistent thematic elements with a single developer. That's what you want. You don't want 30 acres at a time, where you have different types of houses, different types of parks, different types of streets. I, as a River Hill resident, we live close to River Hill Boulevard. This makes a huge difference to me with this thoroughfare. I am interested in knowing when it gets completed. Everything that was going up and down Medina Highway from Vintage Heights to the apartment thing that got squashed at City Council last week was always of particular importance to me. I have young children, and letting them go to River Hill Boulevard is always a challenge. That is a nightmare in the mornings and the afternoons, so the quicker this road gets developed, the better. I do think the ideal place for that road is an extension of 534 straight through. I don't think that's ever going to happen with Kerrville Shriner Park being adjacent to it. You're never going to get a private developer to do that type of road there. There's just no return on investment for it, and we know that public funding for those types of things are far off down the road. So to get a private developer to do this is the ideal scenario, and so you got to do it where they can make some money. And this is the closest you're going to get to that 534 extension. So I think this is another ideal scenario for us in River Hill. I read the packet that was submitted online, and one of the common traits of the opposition letters was the density. I agree, 1,700 homes is a lot. It's a ton. But if you haven't noticed, 1,700 homes are coming to this area, whether we like it or not. We can oppose it all we want, but they're going to be here. And I go back to my original point. You can want it with a single developer, with single thematic elements, as opposed to 5 different 300-home developments. We don't want that. That will hurt property values. With respect to property values, there's a common thought that they might be hurt. Believe it or not, I'm a banker. I do construction loans. I got 50 projects going right now. This is going to help values. All of us with existing homes, our values have been dragged up by the price of new construction. When we have these new construction and new developments, these are getting built at today's prices. They drag your values up. I have benefited from that in River Hill. Every single homeowner over the last 2 years at Comanche Trace has benefited from these $350 to $400 a square foot houses. Now your resales are going for $250 to $300 a foot. None of us ever dreamed that was going to happen 36 months ago. Not even close. Now, having said all that, I reviewed the packet, like I said, and I wanted to reference the specific letter from Trevor Hyde, Comanche Trace Realty president. I think it's of vital importance that the city does a little bit more due diligence on the developer. I would want to know some of the recent projects they've actually completed, not ones that are in process. If it's a new entity domestically, I would like to know background of the history of the principals. I would want to see a balance sheet of their current capital structure just to be able to see that they can see this development through. The worst thing that can happen, I agree with a lot of the speakers here, is for them to start and not be able to finish. I don't have a worry about the demand for the houses. 1,700 sounds like a lot. I'm telling you right now, there are 3 Lennar tract home developments coming to Fredericksburg in the next 48 months. We don't want that here. If we can build with a private developer, with private home sites, and private contractors as opposed to tract home developers, that's what we want, and this is that. Thank you all very much.
Ronnie Carroll, our last speaker.
Thanks, Mike. I've got prepared words here, but I'm gonna have off-the-cuff comment here. As a lot of y'all know, I was a home builder in Houston for 39 years. I've seen numerous developer presentations. And I want you to know, everything we saw today is conceptual. They did a good job, and I know that that's their business plan, and they want it to work as we saw. But this is the best case scenario. With the uncertain future, with interest rates, inflation, recession, and I've seen this happen, I'm afraid they will sell acreage to a tract builder, Lennar Homes. And if you've seen the way tract builders operate, if you go by the high school, there's not one piece of vegetation in that subdivision. They just take it all down, put roads in. Now, that's my off the cuff. And I didn't say I'm from Comanche Trace, but I'm not here on behalf of Comanche Trace. I'm here as a citizen of Kerrville. At the last meeting, I heard a gentleman say that this development is just what 2050 plan called for. And after speaking with other people and reading some of the Plan 2050, I submit that this project does not comply with Plan 2050. Recently, City Council and other leaders reviewed the building codes. They researched the codes in order to make them more consistent, easier to understand, and comply with Plan 2050. Now, right after this code review, a developer who's not developed a subdivision in Texas, much less the water precious hill country, wants to develop a subdivision whose lot density I don't feel adheres to Plan 2050. This developer is also asking for numerous variances. This is exactly what the previously mentioned review by City Council wanted to avoid. I feel the committee, and you too, Drew, should not strap City Council by approving this project with these variances. I feel to allow these variances is unwise, and more importantly, would it be dangerous for the future of Plan 2050. Now, last Saturday, the Daily Times had a front page article that said we've received 3.12 inches of rain year to date. This is less than we received in the 2011 drought. The Guadalupe River Authority issued this statement, and I quote, "I do think it is very important to stress water conservation and let people know that we are in a drought, despite the recent rains and the greening of the vegetation," end quote. The Water Master has adopted restrictions due to the low flow of the Guadalupe River. And I have a question if the city owns senior water rights, because I heard they had junior water rights. Irregardless, we're in a severe drought, and conservation should be on all of our minds. At the last meeting, a lady provided information that the recent well the city drilled was successful. However, after a time, it was discovered that it was taking water from the same aquifer as the other wells. With all these calls for water conservation, I strongly feel that to approve a subdivision with 1,600 homes, 5,000 residents on 487 acres is not water conservation. You owe it to the city, to the citizens of Kerrville, to not let this development with this lot, the lot density provided, to come to fruition. That would be water conservation. I appreciate your time that you allowed me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm gonna close the public hearing unless anyone that has not spoken.
No, I'm gonna speak.
Okay.
It's a public hearing.
I said, unless anyone that has not
Oh, I'm
spoken
sorry.
wishes to speak.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Step up.
My mistake. Please accept my apology.
Go ahead.
Bruce Rickey, 615 Earl Garrett. This is a zoning hearing about a planned development district. There are no variances being asked. They're bringing a custom zone to the city of Kerrville. They've designed it very well in mind with the 2050 plan and the mayor's housing study from 2019. They've actually brought housing types that citizens put their little dots on at all those meetings that we went to, and we talked about what kind of housing types do we want to see. People came out and they stuck their dots on them, and that's why they're in the 2050 plan. They also worked with the mayor's housing study, which also looked at housing types that we have in town, and it identified we needed some multifamily and we need some single family. And what it really talked about that people tend to ignore is when they hear those two things, all they hear is apartments and detached traditional single family houses. A townhome is a single family house. Cottages are single family houses. Cottages can be multifamily if it's in a condominium regime. It doesn't have to be apartments to be multifamily. It doesn't have to be single-family traditional to be single-family. These guys are bringing housing product types that we don't have in Kerrville that our housing study actually says we need. And they're doing it really well. And they're doing it in a way where they're clustering it. So there are neighborhoods that are dense. If you just look where the houses are, they showed us several drawings. The lot layout that they presented for the entire project shows several drawings where, and I didn't have time to count it, but I would bet about 40% of the land is open space. If you look at 1,600 houses on 487 acres, that's barely over 3 houses an acre. That is not high density. That is a lower density than Comanche Trace. That is a lower density than River Hill. Yes, it is. Y'all don't know what you're talking about because you're looking at something you don't understand.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Wow. Well, do the math. 1,600 divided by 500, that's 3.2.
But they don't build .2 a house, so it'll be 4.
No, you're trying to.
Bruce,
Yeah,
address
you know,
us.
It's not.
Ronnie,
And the density.
he's addressing us.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So this is not a high-density development. What should we be concerned about? We need to be concerned about the traffic. That's a TxDOT issue. The access is to state highways. That is out of the control for the city and not part of a zoning hearing. It's not, do we need to be concerned about it? Yes. Is it something we need to work on as things are going forward? Yes. Do we want the arterial? Yes. If we do, like Mr. Bratton mentioned, we do a 300-unit house on one end of this place, we don't get an arterial. We get part of it built. And then the next guy comes on and does another 250 houses, and we get part of it built. That's how development works, because the city doesn't want to pay for it. And I get that. That's how we want it done, because these taxpayers and all the rest of them who participate through all meetings throughout the year, they don't want to pay for it either. They want the developers to pay for it. That's our system. That's capitalism. Zoning, we're not concerned about how this developer is going to do it, because the fact of the matter is, he can get the zoning and sell this to somebody else 2 weeks from now. What we're concerned about with zoning is, does this make sense for Kerrville? Do we want these kinds of housing types in the city? The people who participated in the 2050 plan, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, told us this is what they want. That's why it's in the report. Staff didn't make it up. The consultants didn't make it up. I put dots on stuff. I'm sure you did, Mike, and I'm sure there are people here that did as well. We asked for this. I'm glad I was able to provide some comedy.
You did.
I hope you all realize that this is something much better than what you think you're asking for.
Point of order, the gentleman didn't identify himself or who he's with.
He did.
I didn't hear it. We
He
didn't
did.
hear it.
I didn't go on this, but I'd like to hit and run here, just quick.
Let me let Mr. Patterson first, because he's easier to get there, then we'll get you.
I'm sorry, you're leaving. I have a question.
No, you have to address us, Steve. You don't ask
Oh,
questions.
Well, I'll ask a general question that can be answered.
You can submit your question, and Drew will take it like we've done with everybody else and get it answered.
Steve Patterson, 3584 La Cumbre. I need some clarification on what the last speaker said. He said that this developer is bringing zoning to this, that our zoning doesn't count. Now, so I'd like some clarification about that at the appropriate time.
We can clarify that.
Okay, thank you. But one of the concerns I have is the significant amount of variances that are being requested for this development. I appreciate the fact that development has been kind of outlined and has talked about during the 2050 plan. It's my understanding that the zoning ordinances that we have today for the city of Kerrville would encompass the vision of the 2050 plan, as well as the kind of development that the city wants to see, that's going to basically foster the kind of development that enhances Kerrville for current residents as well as for future residents. And so we've got those ordinances in place. They were built with the 2050 plan in place. And I just don't understand why the variances that the city is, the code that the city has put in place is not sufficient to support the kind of development that we need going forward. If it's not, then we're going to be doing this time after time after time. We either need to ask this developer to go back and rethink the plan to conform to the variances, or maybe we need to rethink the variances. We've got to do one or the other. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, sir.
May I?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
As per my city attorney.
Excellent. First of all, I'd like to start a GoFundMe page.
Sir, your name?
Robert Dozier.
Yes, sir.
115 Lantana, I'm sorry.
There you go.
GoFundMe page. If you fund me, I'll buy as much of this property and keep it, the same as it is. But I'm not expecting that. So, two concerns for me are traffic and lights. I don't know if y'all have considered it, but this would be the perfect time as far as the lighting goes to tap into the Dark Sky organization. Blanco, I believe, has tapped into that. I think Fredericksburg has tapped into that. I like looking out over and looking at the sky and seeing the stars, and the more lights we got coming in, the harder that is to do. And indirect lighting, things, hooded lights, if it's thought about in the first place, it'd be nice. It'd accommodate me in looking at the night sky. I don't like lights on after 10 o'clock. I don't like porch lights. Yeah, I've said that before, so. But, and the traffic, you got a four lane, two-way. The state highways on either side, they're actually two-lane. They have they're two-lane with improved shoulders. So I hope that's being taken into consideration. I'm assuming that there's going to be traffic lights on both ends eventually. The longer you put that off, the happier I am. Less lighting. So, yeah, that's as far as population goes, they're coming anyway. Whether it's here or the surrounding areas, San Antonio is slowly creeping our way. I'm expecting it, but I want good neighbors, and I'll try to be a good neighbor myself. I'll leave the trees up so you can't see my junk. All right. God bless. I've got to scoot.
Thank you, sir. All right. We're going to close.
Mike, do you have time for one more?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I'm Michael Ross. I live Comanche Trace, La Cumbre, like a lot of these people. Couple questions. I got confused by some of the things that Bruce said. First question is, what percent of the reserve is going to be green space? And I'd heard 1,700, 1,700 units over 487 acres, excluding the green space. Also, he compared it and said it was going to be less dense than Comanche Trace. Maybe Drew knows the number, or maybe you know the number, Mike. Trevor led me to believe that Comanche Trace was planned for 1,300 units over 1,300 acres, which, you know, my math, that seems a lot less dense than what the reserve is recommending. So maybe y'all can clarify those
We
numbers.
can.
for me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to close this public hearing at 5:53. I'm going to let you answer the questions, and then I'm
Yeah,
going to
we'll go through.
go through with these guys, and then I'll have my questions. And
Good evening, planning and zoning. I haven't presented.
Tell us the questions as we go along, would you?
Excuse me?
Tell us the questions you're answering
Sure,
as we go along.
sure.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know me, my name's Stuart Barron. I'm the Executive Director of Public Works and Engineering. It has to do with water, wastewater, streets, drainage, solid waste, all of those type things. So I will take the two questions, partially three questions maybe. We'll start with water. I'm not familiar with the letter from Headwaters. I deal with Headwaters quite regularly. If that letter, I wouldn't say that it doesn't exist. I haven't ever seen it. That would be something that would land on my desk, and I haven't seen it. That deals with the different aquifers and the Ellenberger aquifer versus the Lower Trinity aquifer. They are two different aquifers. Talking to Gene over there, there is no confining layer between the two different aquifers. So, but they are distinctly different aquifers, and they're regulated as such through Headwaters. So, that help. There's a lot of people have been using y'all's format here as an opportunity to talk about water, so I wanted to come tonight and clear some of that stuff up. I think y'all had some questions about it last week as well. Getting more to the point of the city's water system and how it works, we've actually done a 100-year water plan. We finished it in about 2019. We planned for the next 100 years for the city of Kerrville's water needs. We identified how fast the city's growing. We identified what we think our water needs are going to be for the next 100 years, and we evaluated about 12 different opportunities or different strategies to achieve those water shortfalls that we may have. So far, we've implemented the first one. Actually, it was pumping water today. The Ellenberger well that is on Loop 534, it actually was pumping 850 gallons a minute today. So
We've done that since that plan. We're following the plan. We feel like we have adequate water. We are in a drought situation. I'm not saying that we will not go into drought stages. We're one of the few communities right now that are not in drought stages. I think it's still smart of us to conserve. We don't know how long the drought's going to last, so we conserve as much water as we can. But as it stands right now, we have sufficient water. We're planning to continue that method. Second big topic issue for Public Works and Engineering was the traffic study. Right now, at this time in this process, they're coming to y'all for a zoning change. We don't have the civil plans for their development. And so we haven't required them to do the traffic study. Their engineers have been in contact with TxDOT to evaluate where the traffic study needs to happen, how it goes on to River Hills Boulevard, where they're going to look at light interchange at Loop 534, River Hills Boulevard, where are all those impacts going to be looked at. And so they have started that process yet, but it has not been required by the city as for this at this stage in their planning process. Right now, they're just going for zoning, and so that is not part of the zoning requirement. Is that? I guess I'll let Drew handle most of those, and if he has any questions, I'll stand up and answer a couple more.
Thank you, Stuart.
I'm just gonna kind of run through these, no particular order. The address of the property, there are multiple addresses under the Kerrville Central Appraisal District that share 2601 Medina and that share 2550 Bandera Highway. Since those properties have never been subdivided through the plating process, Kerr 911 and the city have never assigned addresses. So those are the assumed addresses that the appraisal district has had for a long time. At one point in time, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Keeble owned all of this property and the property that we're talking about at Vintage Heights. So those would have been under one ownership. And they are divided up in separate parcels based on the initial surveys. You heard the number of surveys I read off for the property description. So those are the most current addresses we have at this time. As they go through the development process and subdivisions, those addresses will be assigned accordingly. Stuart covered the traffic impact analysis. That's a process through TxDOT. Whatever impacts this development causes, the developer will be required to work with TxDOT to make those improvements. Whether that's a turn lane, a traffic light, stop sign, and whatever else in between. They'll be required to make those improvements. Incentives, at this point, has not been a conversation with City Council. City Council would be the one that would grant incentives, if any. The developer has spoken with city staff to see if there is a path for that. But at this time, obviously, we haven't gone to council, so there have been none approved. Of course, if the property is annexed and zoned with planned development district, if it's not developed by these guys, that planned development district, as you have in front of you, would be the development plan for the property. So whether it's these developers or another, these are the rules that it would be developed under. If they wanted to change those, they would come back through the process, make their request, and make those amendments to the planned development district or to any other zoning district. That is the purpose of this process. Let's see. I heard a comment about building codes. There is no change to the building code. There is no change to the zoning code for this project. The building codes are the same codes that the council adopted. This doesn't modify any of that. They're still held to those standards. Doesn't change subdivision code. Doesn't change the overall zoning code. So the planned development district, Mr. Strachey mentioned, PD is more or less a customized zoning. They've brought a proposal for staff and planning commission and city council to review. Part of that is a departure from the standard zoning to fit their development plan. This is no different than several properties we have around town. The Landing has a planned development district. They asked for certain amendments to the code. The property surrounding the sports complex, the Calla Foundation, is a planned development district. They asked for specific amendments to the code based on their plan. Comanche Trace is a planned development district, and they asked for specific amendments within the code when that was done in 1999. So a planned development district is a part of the zoning code. It is a part of the comprehensive plan. The planned development district is meant to be a flexible tool so that when there is a project that doesn't fit exactly within the code, they have this opportunity to bring it forward to see if it fits within the confines of the development procedures and consistency with the city. I think that covers several questions there. The dark skies, we do not currently have a dark sky ordinance. The Code Review Committee has actually made a recommendation to City Council to adopt a dark sky ordinance. And they've presented guidelines, or our office has drafted those guidelines to be presented to council in the next coming months. If council chooses to take those guidelines and make them an ordinance, that would of course apply citywide. If the developer chooses to, they can adopt dark sky guidelines by ordinance in the PD or through their deed restrictions. That would be their option. But again, if council does adopt that recommendation, it would be required citywide. And the percentage of green space, I don't have an exact number. I don't know if, Nick, you have that. The overall density, as Mr. Strachey pointed out, is about 3 to 3.5 units per acre. Your standard R1 lot with streets and so on would get you to close to about 7.5 units per acre. So this is not a dense development. Some of the pockets of the development, like the mixed use and the townhomes, are a higher density for those small neighborhoods. But overall, across the 500 acres, this would not be considered a dense development. If anything, it's still fairly sparse development. Other areas of town are consistent with that. If you were to draw 500 acres around, say, the Starkey Manor area of town, you're looking at about 700 to 800 units, not counting any multifamily. So if you added any multifamily within that 500 acres, obviously you've added 200 or 300 units to that. If you take 500 acres on either side of Sidney Baker, just north of downtown, you're looking at 12 to 1,400 units. Add a multifamily complex to that, and you're at 1,700 units and 500 acres. So this is not inconsistent with city's development. This is just a master plan project, and with those slight amendments to make it flexible for them to react through their phasing. And I believe that's all the questions. We'll defer percentage of open space and explanation of the 300-foot lot size that you were looking at.
Okay to address the board?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the 300-foot, just to clarify that 300-foot figure, this is adjacent to Comanche Trace, and what we did was and this was in the original design, so we didn't have to dig up some mystical number. There's a property line between Comanche Trace and between the reserve. In that particular setting, which we have called the estate lot neighborhood, we've got lots that are a minimum of 300 feet deep. And when I say lots, I'm suggesting between the current property line, which we're not going to change, and the face of curb is a 300-foot depth. Within that 300-foot depth is a setback, and we haven't gone into civil design yet, so I can't tell you the precise depth. But within that 300-foot depth is a percentage of the land, and for conversation, I'm going to say 50% is set aside for open space. So that open space is either in the form of a vineyard or a form of open space within the community that doesn't have any houses on it. The other side of that, though, is where homes would exist. So does that clarify? We can pull the picture up again too, if you wish.
I think you've clarified it, but it's still squishy, and I think it's going to be until I see it.
Like I say, I don't know, I'll defer to you all whether you want to pull that image up again or not. I'm happy to elaborate on that.
I think in essence, what you can, to try to make you understand what he's talking about is if, I'm on the Architectural Review Committee for Comanche Trace, I'm on the HOA board. If someone comes to us with a plan to build a home, Comanche Trace has setback requirements and site requirements that you have to abide by. The setback requirement off the back of your lot in most of the neighborhoods in Comanche Trace is 25 to 40 feet. Which means that you have to, if you build, you have to be, let's use the number 40 feet. The back of your house has to be 40 feet off the back property line. That's basically what the setback is. What they're saying is, how much did you say, 100 and?
Yeah, it's about 150 feet.
150 feet, those lots, and again, this is what they're saying. I'm not telling you this is what's gonna happen.
Well, actually, we are saying it because we believe that's right. We know.
They are, the house that's gonna, where you're building your home, there's gonna be another house behind you back there on this property. The back of that house will be set back 150 feet from your property line in the back. Basically, that's what a setback is. So that 150 feet will either be, according to them, it'll be a green space, it could be a vineyard. But there will be no building on it.
Right, there are no homes proposed within that setback area.
The R1 standard would be 25 feet.
Right.
Comanche Trace does have, in the deed restrictions, an additional setback requirement. Correct.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't sign up. Thank you. My name is Cindy Fort, and I live on La Cumbre. I live on the end of La Cumbre that on that diagram does not have the 150
Right.
setback. There's like 5 or 6 homes
That is
on
correct.
the end of La Cumbre that would not be adjacent to what y'all are calling estate homes.
Right.
So there would be a home closer to my rear property line than 150 feet.
Well, it could be closer, but I mean, it's not required to be 150 feet. That's what they're doing,
But
and
the
a lot of that
lot
has
si-
to do with topography.
The lot sizes, I realize it's a conceptual drawing and it might
Sure.
change, but the lot sizes on his conceptual drawing are just not that big. They can't be 150 feet because the lot's not that big.
Well,
Down at the end of La Cumbre.
I'm happy to address that because again, we haven't gone to civil drawings, but we're far enough along that I can address your question. And Drew, I'm sorry, would you mind pulling up that slide?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. As I say, we put a lot of time and effort into this, and obviously, it's not to a tentative map yet, and that, in layman's term, I mean, it's not a civil engineered drawing just yet.
Martin, can you pull up the applicant PowerPoint?
Okay. If we can zip up to,
Yeah, he's got it.
this slide, go back one slide.
That's one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, the area where you can see the words that say vineyard open space, correct? Those lots between the property line, yeah, right where the property line is, between the property line and that road, is indeed that 300-foot minimum. So what that means is within that district, the orange bubbles are gonna be within approximately 150 feet of the road that's bounding them. Those four lots are slightly different, and the reason they're slightly different is because the terrain is altogether different. That part of the site is, I won't say it's flat, and we've walked the site, so I'm familiar with the landscape, and I'm not, pulling any shenanigans. That area, the topography is much more gentle, and as a result, we're showing those lots, and to clarify the distinction here, the lot depth would be about 140 feet. So that means from the front yard to the backyard is 140 feet. At this point, we haven't nailed down exactly what the rear yard is, but I can say with a fairly high level of confidence, you're probably going to wind up with a 30 to 40 foot rear yard setback in any event. So what we're saying is I don't know. It's more that if the current standard is 20 feet or 25 feet, we're plus 15 or plus 20. And the purpose is those are also seen to be, those lots are the way the community is conceptually drawn, there's a foothill area adjacent to those hills, which you're on the other side of, and we see those as premier lots, period. We see your lots as premier lots, and these lots as premier lots. Therefore, they're designed in a way that we want it to be premier real estate, for you and for us. And they're wide. Those are at least 120 feet wide.
How much are those lots gonna cost? I wanted to buy one or two or three or four.
Well, let's get it built and then we'll find out.
Did they answer your question, Ms. Ford?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There was one other question that I missed as far as the background of the developer. Obviously, they have a right to apply for a zone change request and annexation. This request technically is coming from Mr. Keeble, the property owner, because he has given them authority to apply on his behalf. We do not do any background checks or vetting of developers and applicants. They bring forward a proposal, we look at the proposal as it is and bring it to you to see, for recommendation based on zoning policy, comprehensive plan, and so on.
Okay, so we've gotten to that point. Any questions, guys, before we?
I just wanted to be able to respond. I don't know that all the questions were answered. I had some more responses to some of the questions that have been asked along the way, if I may.
Yes.
So, one of the things that's important about a zoning hearing is what are the items that are looking for when changing a zoning? Three of the ones, you look to the state code or the city code about what that says. What are you actually looking for? And one of them is suitability as it's currently zoned. One of them is the consistency as what's planned for the future, and one of them is public policy. Those are just three of some of the elements that you look at. So looking at the suitability as currently zoned, Drew pointed out that the zoning as it's currently in place is R1 for approximately 250 acres. So that R1 zoning allows 5,000 square foot lots. That's a density of 7.5 to 9 units an acre right now on the area that is 250 acres within the city limits. So you're looking at somewhere between 1,800 and 2,200 homes currently that's already zoned within the city. That doesn't include another 200 acres that's being annexed that right now is not zoned, not in the city, doesn't have a density limitation. There is no limitation on density in the county. So if you want to talk about the density that's there, it's massive. If you add up that 1,800 to 2,200 homes that's already on the part that's in the city and what could be done, it's huge. And we're looking at a density of 3 units an acre, 1,700 homes over the course of 487 acres. So I think that's really important to look at the suitability as it is. Is R1 suitable in terms of density? Is R1 suitable in terms of how you handle what the comp plan 2050 has asked for in terms of there's this missing middle housing, right? There's homes that are too high and there's homes that are too low and there's not ones in the middle. Well, you can't get those middle homes. You can't get the homes that are being asked for in 2050 with R1 zoning. Traditional 5,000 square foot, traditional lot zoning, you can't get there. You have to get there with being a little more creative, and that's what 2050 asks for, and that's what we're addressing. So that's all about its current suitability, and we talked about public policy. So Drew has pointed out in several of the instances how those housing types are being asked for, and then we're providing them. So here we are with a PD zoning. We're bringing something new. We're bringing something that is consistent with the plan, but is also our own zoning code. It's not R1. It's more consistent with what's actually being asked for. Again, one of the principles of a rezoning is what is consistent with what you have planned for. This is it. We're coming forward not with variances. It keeps being referred to as variance. This is not a variance. It's our own code written specifically for us. And one of the benefits of doing that is that you get to balance it out. I mean, nobody's paying attention to the fact that we have 200 acres plus that we're calling R2 estate for these large lot residential developments. There are smaller lots elsewhere, and we asked for special changes in the code to accommodate that. We'll balance it out. That's how you get those missing middle markets. That's how you get large lots on one side and small lots on the other. It's a balance. The only way you can do that is by master planning. Another gentleman talked about it too. You don't want this piecemeal homes being built 30 acres at a time, 20 acres at a time, especially when it's in the county and there's no density. You just get little developments one at a time. This gives that overall ability to control the growth. It's exactly what the city wants and is said in the 2050 plan. Control the growth. Well, how do you do it? You have to do it all at once, and you need a developer that's willing to take that risk and say, not only are we going to take it down, but we're going to do it in a very creative way and balance it out. Large lots on one side, small lots on the other. It's consistent. And another gentleman, I'm sorry, I have to say this, had mentioned that somehow, or intimated that somehow this development causes growth. The zoning doesn't cause growth. The zoning is actually a response to growth, and that's what we're doing. And in that way, our response is consistent, it's appropriate, and it's controlled in a way that's going to benefit the city exactly how it's planned for. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments?
I've got one comment for Stuart. Recently going out to the water plant and learning about Kerrville, because water. We all know it's very important. Can you hit just a little bit on what's unique about Kerrville and how we developed something out there that we were, I think, the second city in the United States to have the aquifer recharge.
Okay, just a little brief about water?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long you want me to spend on it? That's one of my favorite subjects.
Be
Other than
careful what you ask
wastewater.
No, if you haven't seen it, I'm gonna say go out there and look at it, because
amazing.
it's amazing what we have here in Kerrville.
So I'll try to sum this up in a really short, I mean, it's probably an hour discussion, but the city of Kerrville has about 5 different sources of water. And the one that you're talking about is our aquifer storage and recovery system. That particular system is when we do have a lot of water flowing in the river, we try to retrieve it first. We get about 80 to 90% of our water out of the Guadalupe River during that time of plenty. And in the wintertime, there's not enough demand from our customers, and so we take that water that's available to us in the wintertime, treat it all to drinking water standards, serve all that we can to the customers, and what's left over we put in the aquifer storage and recovery system. And that's basically a well. It's a groundwater well that we're storing surface water in. And then during times of need, like we are in now, we'll actually retrieve that water when the Guadalupe River is not flowing as well, and we're kind of leaning on groundwater or ASR water. We'll be retrieving that water, pulling it out, and then serving that to the customers during this time of need. So I think that's the ASR system. There's obviously 4 more different types of water that we use, and I'm happy to go through all of them if you would like, but.
I don't think we need to do
No,
that,
it's
not
just-
for this purpose.
Just one of
Very
the
good.
reasons we're not where everybody else is right
May I
now.
ask a question
Yes, ma'am.
of the water man? No?
Yes, ma'am.
She can ask the board now.
Okay, Mr. Boards.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Amaya Demore, 3592 La Cumbre. Some gentleman in here said we'd pumped 1 billion gallons of water into our aquifer. Is that what he's referring to?
Yes.
So we're not buying the water, we're not transporting it, we're just using our water. Thank you.
Any comments?
Yeah, just my personal thoughts here. We obviously need housing. We've been here for 4 years. We were fortunate to move down here from Lubbock 4 years ago. It's one of those things where it's like, why didn't we get to Kerrville sooner? Obviously, the demand's there. People want to be in Kerrville because it is different, right? Because it's not Bernie, it's not Austin, it's not Dripping Springs. We need houses. I personally think that we have a huge demand. If you talk to anybody at Peterson or Kerrville ISD, any of the big employers, you'll find out very quickly that people do not live here, but they work here. And I think there's a importance to try and provide housing of multiple types. We need more estate houses. We need townhomes. We need single-family homes. We need more apartments. Just housing in general, I think we need more of. I do think that there is value in this master plan community, that you are doing it with one vision, and there's some unity there rather than the piecemeal 30 or 40 acre tracts at a time. I have seen communities like this. We spent some time in Fort Worth a few years back, and like the gentleman mentioned earlier, those communities are all over the place up there. They bring vibrancy to the surrounding area. I feel like they raise up, the surrounding community. So I think there is a value here. I think that there have been lots of good points that have been made, but I certainly see some good things about this opportunity.
David? I'm sorry, me? Yes, sir.
Well, it certainly was, no doubt about it, was a nice presentation, and I do have some mixed concerns about the setbacks as you're defining this PDD. And perhaps that's, I'm old school of what we're doing today in the city. So that's one of my major concerns.
I'm just not comfortable granting carte blanche variances.
So I have a couple of questions. You and I have had this discussion more than once, and I've listened to this, and my understanding is, I know they're asking for a PDD zoning. They're asking for a PDD zoning that that varies from our subdivision, our new subdivision code.
No, the zoning code.
Okay, the new zoning code. They're asking for the PDD and everything they want to do in it. It varies from our zoning code. Some parts of it vary from our zoning code. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so a lot of it, little of it, substantial amount of variance so they can do what they want to do. Can you, is there?
I don't think it's substantial. Again, it's consistent with the development plan. It just doesn't fit exactly into the R2 standard. So with the way they've shown their open space, the net result with the variances, or excuse me, with the amendments, they're not variances, first of all. With the amendments to the code and the open space that they want to provide through the HOA, the net result is going to look the same. The houses will still be 30 feet apart. Instead of two 15-foot setbacks, you have a 5-foot setback, a 20-foot alley, and a 5-foot setback. From the ground, you won't know the difference. From the plat and who owns the property, who maintains the property, they're putting this open space into the HOA for the neighborhood to maintain. With that, they are requesting a reduced setback so that you don't have HOA 20 feet and then another 15 feet on each property line, therefore broadening it out and is not an efficient use of land. So no, these are not
That's
significant
one instance.
requests.
So another instance is they're requesting a 15-foot increase in height for townhomes. Is that vary from our zoning code?
That is variance. Again, they're looking at a potential for a 3-story product. And at 35 feet, it's very difficult to get a 3-story product. Again, we need more housing. We need to be more efficient with the land that we're using. So to balance the open space, they're looking at going taller instead of wider on some of their product. But I don't think that's inappropriate. I think that.
What other differentiation from our zoning code are they asking for?
That captures.
Smaller lots?
The smaller lots and the setbacks, again, balance out the open space. So instead of having an alley that's an easement on everyone's property, the HOA owns the alley. That alley would have counted towards the lot size. So the lot is now 10 feet shorter to start with. And the front space, which is HOA maintained space, would have been the front yard. So by the smaller lot, the footprints really aren't changing. The open space would have been the required front and rear yards. But again, the net result, I think, is going to be comparable to what R2 would do. And again, the Planned Development District is part of the zoning code.
Right.
It's written into the code for this type of product. So it's not a departure from the zoning code. They're just customizing to fit the development plan that they have. Again, no different than several other of our developments that we have.
Any other questions? I have concerns. I don't know any other way to state this. I have concerns with standard change, whatever you want to call it. They're coming in with a planned development district that deviates from what we just put together. I'm concerned about the fact that when we first came in, my understanding was the road thoroughfare was going to be built, and now I understand
That's not relevant to the zoning. Excuse me.
I understand what you're saying is not relevant to the zoning, but what's relevant for my making a decision is what's going to happen. And so I get your point.
It should not be relevant to your decision.
Good Chair, could I, Mr. Sigerman, could I say something? I want to make sure we're on the same page. Y'all are on the same page with what's being presented. This is a proposal, an application before you for a planned development district. Y'all's role here is to approve that application, approve it with modifications, or deny it. It's Mr. Paxton said, it's completely contemplated by the code. It's a zoning category that allows the use of unique and innovative land use and design techniques to further the city's development. That's exactly what they're proposing. And whether you like those provisions or, with their proposal or not, they're not doing anything outside the code. They're not creating variances. I want to make sure that everyone in this room understands that. They're not asking for variances. That's a defined legal term with a legal process that's outside the scope of what they're asking for. Whether getting to the thoroughfare, whether they build it or not, that's a legal process as well. They alluded to that. There'll be some rough proportionality analysis that goes into that. If their proposal basically doesn't trigger the need for that road, they won't have to build it. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to tell us that. That's some analysis that we'll go through between zoning and then platting. And that's what platting takes care of, right? Public infrastructure. The issue before you, quite simply, is the use of this property.
So the issue is whether or not we approve the PDD as presented. Basically, that's what we're saying.
Or you have modifications that you think are appropriate.
I'm going to call the question. There is a proposal to approve the PDD as presented with the standards that they proposed. I'm looking for a motion.
I would move to approve as presented.
I have a motion and a second. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed?
Fails.
It does.
Fails.
It's a 3-3. That's why we normally have another person here. So you can have some more discussion if you think it would be fruitful and that it would result in a different result, or lead to a different result, or it's up to you. How do you conclude the meeting?
Listen, I want to see the property developed. I think the development plan is good with some modifications, and that's just me. I have to make a decision based on what I think is the right decision for the city, and I don't know where we go from here. We need some guidance on.
Are there specific modifications that would change that?
Can they appeal to council?
I'm assuming they can.
What was the question?
They appeal to council?
They can.
They could appeal to council.
Well, hang on. We're working through this. The motion failed because it was a tie vote. You all could have some discussion, which you're apparently trying to do now. Chairman, if you've got some modifications that you think we can work through, that you'd like to see, then, and you think it would be, again, it's 6:30, we've been at this y'all been at this since 2 o'clock today, not the same issue, of course. If you think you can work through it this evening, then I would suggest you try to do that. If not, you can always, ask to table this while staff works through modifications with developer. Now, I'll say this, I haven't heard any sort of, issues from y'all as to what you want to modify. I've heard concerns, of course, but I haven't heard specifics on what you would like to see done to the proposal.
In essence, you're parliamentarian.
You need to let the chair run the show. That's the parliamentarian.
I'm not, I understand the PDD, and I understand the zoning code we have, and I understand that there are some changes from the zoning code that they're requesting that I'm really not comfortable with, and I would probably have to have some guidance on how to rectify that, you know, how to, try to get behind this. And maybe we need to table this and maybe have a meeting with Drew and go through this and try to get more comfortable with it. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I have two other people that voted against this, so what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, there seemed to be a lot of the permit by right that I don't know if I can get comfortable with. And again, that's me.
What uses by right did you have
Well, they're just
concern with?
scattered through. I mean, as I read through this, I ran across that statement, permit by right, so many times. It just brought up some concern. STRs for one, going back to something we're all familiar with.
So the only thing that they've identified that would be different from our standard zoning code is the agriculture and winery use across the property, because that's gonna be in the midst of their open space. The R2 district, they did have the short-term rental, and the guest house for patio homes and townhomes.
Use.
Everything else is standard. R2 district on the estate, again, they actually gave higher standards in our zoning code. The mixed-use district, the only additions were adding single-family back to the mixed-use district. Standard mixed-use does not allow single-family. In this case, they're asking to allow single-family, should they want that as an option. So mixed-use on the standard code stops at apartments for multifamily. But as far as uses, that's the only, everything else is standard.
Well, we reduced some of the lot sizes. We modified.
On the development standards, yes, there's, he brought up land use, the specific uses. So again, the R2 district, excluding the estate lots, duplexes, townhomes, small lots, patio homes, and single family, did have reduced lot sizes and reduced setbacks. Was there a specific section or something in addition that would make you comfortable?
I think I would be more comfortable if it was more in line with what our zoning code is, Drew. That's really in essence what I'm saying. I mean, it's a PDD, but there's it's zoning, and there's modifications from, if someone was just gonna go in there and develop that property under the zoning code that we have right now, there are substantial changes to it.
Okay. Is there specific ones that you would like to see removed? That's my question.
I'd have to really go through it case by case.
I mean, that's the discussion we're having.
You know, point of order, it failed. You can't just bring it up again.
Sir,
Now going
yeah,
through
we
the
can.
whole
Yeah, we can.
process again.
Yes, we can.
We'll get legal counsel if that's what you want.
Okay, the motion failed, didn't pass. It failed because it was 3-3. They can work through a separate motion if they
I
so
don't
choose.
think so.
They can't,
They
they
always
can't.
fail.
No, you're not their legal counsel. They can't.
Oh, okay, you're the legal counsel. We'll
Right.
get legal counsel.
Well, if that's a threat, that's fine, but.
That's not a threat.
It is.
You
It
just
is.
told me
Stop,
you're not the
stop.
legal counsel.
Tony, you are out of order. Either stop or leave.
You as well, sir, sorry.
No,
Can I ask him a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. I just don't.
I would say maybe we need to table this, have some discussions with it, and maybe when we come back with our other member, we have a full set and see what happens. I don't, you know.
Well, I think that's fine, and I think what the last few minutes have been productive working through this. I think it still would help to be as specific as possible as to what you want staff to do in the interim with the developer. Because I don't think it'll be fruitful, it may not be fruitful or productive. It would even help the gallery here, people that may want to return, and you know, and think about in the interim, what you want changed. I mean, obviously, you know, 3 of you didn't like it, 3 of you were, you know, were okay with it or wanted to prove it. So my point is, it would help to get, if you can, to have more specifics on what you'd like to see to consider this in a more favorable light, if possible. Maybe that's never going to be possible.
Well, I think it is possible based on some modifications. I mean, you know, it's hard. My perspective is I'm not comfortable with their request of changing the standards of the zoning code to meet their plan. I guess that's what it is. I guess that's what my concerns are. I mean, I'm really not comfortable, and I know it's not the process, but I can't really see what they want to do, and we don't know what they want to do. We have a conceptual plan, which is the process for a PDD, but we don't know what the end product is. And I understand there's a process, and the end product has to go through the planning development services. Everything has to be approved, from water to traffic to everything else. I'm not really that concerned with that as I am, you know, it's a huge development, substantially different from Kerrville. And some of it has to do with the change in the zoning standards. I don't know how else to say it. I mean,
Are you recommending, I'm looking at specific pages, the section 3 of their proposed standards. Are you suggesting that they remove those reductions in setbacks and lot sizes?
I may be, Drew, but again, I would have to sit down and go through it, you know, step by step.
I would argue that we have. We did that last time and we have this time.
Well, I thought I did it when I went with, when
you and I have
went
done it
through
offline
again,
as well.
And I don't know, you heard what I've said. I don't know how else to state it. I don't know what the next step is. We are where we are.
Would you like to table it to or continue it to the next meeting?
With that, do you think you
Can I just
guys,
ask what our
the
options
guys
are?
that voted yes, the guys that voted no, would it be an opportunity to,
Don't think it, right now, I can't change my vote.
I think it'd be beneficial too if we have Mr. Broncar here. That way we'd have full commission decision.
I agree. I think we would not have a stalemate.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask what options are available. Is it tabling? Is it a motion to reconsider?
We're not gonna reconsider it tonight. We voted. It's a 3-3 vote, which in essence means it failed. The PDD did not get approved. We have the option to, I don't know, Mike, what are the options?
Make sure we're clear. We're not under Robert's rules. Your rules don't.
What
they're
rules
current-
are we under?
Your rules don't address a 3-3 vote. My argument is the motion failed, didn't pass, and so we're kind of at a standstill. So staff is
Got you.
we don't know what to do, right? So I'm asking you all to either reconsider the motion and make it dispositive tonight, up or down, or to make a motion to table it, and then in the interim, we can work along the lines of the comments that we've received so far, and work with the developer and try to, address those concerns.
chance to address specifics. Those specifics.
Mike, can I?
Absolutely.
So, as Mike alluded to, right? So it's approval with conditions, or denial, right? There are areas that y'all feel a little gray on, right? You want modificate, you want to learn a little bit more, we're gonna talk about it more. That the developers are amenable to that discussion, that's kind of a longer discussion, right? That's to get into specifics of challenges that you have, right? Challenges that we have. I think that is gray. It would behoove us to work through, I think, there's modifications to this plan. So, Mike, this has been denied as it is, right? Or there's a 3-3, it's a vote that's as it is, not approved as it is, right? Modifications to that are still under the consideration, or can be under the consideration of the board, right? And so, it would help us to know better what those are. I think it would help the developer better to know what those things are. This is middle ground. This is a huge property, right? This doesn't need to just be, hey, here's what we have to offer. You guys just say no. These things, this is a back and forth, right? So the short-term rentals was brought up, right? Well, we just had an entire discussion about short-term rentals,
we did.
right? And I can guarantee you that short-term rentals by right probably isn't gonna happen.
No, it's not.
Right? So there's a modification in that, right? There's some other portions of that were brought up. Well, I think we just need to all dig into the specifics of what those are, what your concerns are, what their push points are. Are there areas to meet in the middle? If there are, vote yes. If they're not, no. We're done, we've moved on. So that's my recommendation.
Do we want to go back and individually come up with a list of what in here that we don't agree with,
I think that's probably a good idea.
and then meet back again? I mean, I hate to drag this out again, but perhaps a table is. I know I could do that. I could sit down and list out what I don't like.
What do you guys think? I mean, you guys, I know you voted for it.
I'm good with it.
We can table it until the other member is here.
Yeah. So can you? I think that's the thing to do. You know, we're getting paid big bucks to do this,
Don't
Mike.
make me have heart palpitations.
Say again, Mike?
Don't make me have heart palpitations. I mean, we just, I think we have enough to work on.
Yeah, I
It
think
would
what
be
we
better
talked
to have
about
more
doing is what we would
specifics.
like to do, what all of us at one time, if we're allowed to do that, is to meet with you, Drew, and maybe even you guys, and let's talk about what our concerns are and see what we might be able to live with as far as variations from the standard, for lack of a better term. Can we do that, Mike?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so not individually, but like
Right.
together with them, with you all discussing, talking about, this short-term rental by right. You guys, is this you have to have this? And they say, well, no, we don't have to have it. Okay, well, that goes away and now it's, conditional use permit, same as everybody else has. Okay, we got through that hurdle. All right, let's talk about the next thing, whatever those things are. And so you guys can discuss those things and, whether or not you're comfortable or uncomfortable, yes or no, that's y'all's purview. But I want to make sure that, for the sake of their investment already into this and for the community's sake, that we thoroughly discuss each one of these things between the body and the developer. And so I think that's getting down into the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts of exactly what they're asking for. And until you're clear and you all feel comfortable making a decision based on, your understanding of what that is, then we just sit on that point until we get to the next point. So,
Well, that's what we're talking about doing, meeting with Drew.
you gotta do it out here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you gotta do it
you
in
gotta do it
open.
out here. We do it out here in the open, right? And we'll talk about it. This is with all of us, so
you have this item, you have the plant, you have all of that stuff sitting with you. Write out what your questions are, specific issues and challenges you have that you're like, this is a no for me, this is a no for me, whatever those are. And we bring that back to the table, and that discussion happens with the developer. And that's where it's the approval with the modifications, you know, those conditions change, right? And so that's what that discussion is, but that's gotta take place out in the open with everybody.
So I think that's a good thing to do, but I think we need to do that with our other member. I think we need to have 7 people here. I think we need to push this until the next meeting and make sure that everybody's gonna be, or call a special meeting, I don't care.
Certainly is easier when you have odd numbers.
Well, we're not gonna have it's gonna get either voted up or down, it's not gonna be.
And while we do want to meet with everybody, I also don't want there to be a quorum by accident if we meet with everybody. I mean, if it,
But it would be this meeting or the next meeting.
well, I was going to say if there's a chance for, he has mentioned a special meeting for just basically like a work session. We could add
No, it wouldn't be a work session, it would be a special P and Z meeting to make this decision with our other members.
Yeah, I mean, if that's that way everybody's in the same room, we can answer the questions at the same time.
So that's what we could do too. I mean, you just had a workshop on short-term rentals. You could do a workshop on the PD and the development of this property. Sit around a table. The public, of course, would be, you know, invited. And you could see if the PDD or the application as proposed with modifications might be more, you can get to a point where you'd approve it.
Okay.
James?
Yes, sir.
Like that workshop would not have an action item.
Right.
And that would
I mean, I don't,
be scheduled
so
for the next.
workshop would not be an action item. It would just see if we could come to consensus. And then it would go to a meeting for up or down vote.
And if I can ask one more procedural question. I know that you said the code isn't written right now as a way to handle the 3-3, you know, no recommendation. Does that include us moving forward to city council with a recommendation of denial? Us choosing to do that, saying the no recommendation, we'll take that as a denial? That's something that, for instance, San Antonio has. That you can, but it's written in their code to say that.
Yeah.
That might not be an option, but I want to make sure.
Yeah, let's look at that real quick.
That's fine with me. That works for me.
Can I ask one question? Maybe I can ask, can I ask one? I mean, no.
We're pretty much done, Ronnie.
So, that's all right. What's the question, Ronnie? I'll ask.
What are we gonna do?
Well, are they allowed to go, take this as a denial, Mike, and go to city council?
Let me just look real quick.
Yeah.
I think that'd be the best solution.
I love it.
Just like anything else, you know,
City council's overruled us 3 times in the last 5 decisions.
I know we've had.
Yeah, I don't think they have either, I'm just not, I don't like that. I mean, that doesn't mean it's not a good thing.
No, I agree with you.
I'll tell you, Jay, Number 2, yeah, we're in negotiating, we're in discussions with the city asking. 23D.
Biggest reason why I'm for this.
Sure.
I mean, I was they're losing, talk
Yeah, well, I asked that
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what it should be.
And that's the thing about ours doesn't cost more than anything else. I'm looking at it as we need housing still. Exactly.
They can't build through
And that's, you know, my deal is not really a workshop because I was not a workshop.
My only comment is,
Workshops, it would have to be approved to have a come through. That's my concern.
recommendation, then I'd be too afraid, even if you said, yeah, I think you can, I'd be too afraid it could invalidate the zoning, because we didn't have a PDD, so we're sitting there. So I think.
I'm like this with any grants that I get.
No, I'd rather have,
A lot harder to turn down the next guy that wants to come in and do it.
see, we're not ready,
Townhouses with this one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the code
Ladies and
doesn't.
gentlemen,
Hey, Tony, sit down, please.
So, bottom line, our code doesn't address this situation. You know, what a 3-3 vote means. The motion, not to rehash it, our motion was to approve. That motion failed 3-3. In my general world, that means the motion failed, right? But what is the effect of that motion? I don't think you can read specifically through the code or even operation of law and state law that then transcends into a denial. If it were a denial, if you all had voted to deny and that had been approved, then it would be out of your hair and it would perhaps go to council if they appealed that decision. My recommendation, and I don't like to do, I'm giving you legal advice, right? My recommendation would be to either sit here and try to figure out a motion that's, that passes, and that's obviously going to take 4 votes, or
How about a motion that fails and then it gets to go to city council?
that would be fine. That's an option to do. But my point is, at this point, based upon reading the code and kind of a gray area, I would go back and determine whether you all could have some form of a motion, right? Some form to approve that's going to pass 4-2, to deny it's going to pass 4-2, even with modifications that'll pass 4-2, or a motion to table it and to do, a workshop or a meeting in the future where staff can sit down with the developer and work on the ideas and concerns and issues that you all have raised here this evening. It's a long-winded way of saying the code doesn't address the current situation, and so that's my advice.
So, we voted on this. So theoretically, can we make a motion to approve the PDD meeting City of Kerrville zoning codes in all instances?
You could, right?
Can we do that?
That would be approval with modifications. There's going to be some modifications. And I don't know if everyone, I'm not clear, I'm not, I'm not the planner, and I'm not in y'all's shoes, but you all need to be clear on what modifications really that would mean. And that may take some time to go through. And
Well, I mean, in essence, if I say I make a motion to approve this PDD under the standards that meet all of the current City of Kerrville zoning codes, is that,
So, excuse me. So no modifications to the land uses, no modifications to the development standards, or just the development standards?
no, the land uses I don't have an issue with.
Okay, so let's refer to the development standards in the packet. That's the
They-
only, open your packet to the development standards, so that I'm understanding what we're talking about. Because there's 4 sections of their development standards that they've proposed.
Okay, again, that's not what I want to propose. What I want to propose is I make a motion that the PDD is approved following all of the zoning codes of the City of Kerrville. Or the subdivision codes, or whatever you want to call them, all the zoning. Established zoning guidelines.
But you do not have issue with the land uses they've proposed.
Well, the land uses they propose are different residential neighborhoods, am I correct? Is that what you're talking about, or the commercial? No, I don't have any issues with that.
Okay, so they have the agriculture and winery as part of
I
their
don't have
open
any
space.
issue with all the open spaces, agriculture, and wine. I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for everybody else.
So we're just talking about the site design and development standards.
And height standards.
Yes, so that includes lot sizes, lot widths, lot frontage, or excuse me, setbacks, and those aspects, and height.
That is correct.
Okay, so that would be, of their proposal, that would be labeled as section 3.
So,
And permitted by right. Is that,
So section 3
By right in
is just the
section
lot
3?
size, setbacks, height, those standards.
oh, okay.
okay, now, I have a question. I make this proposal, we approve this PDD, they decide they want to come and an individual case, they want to make a request for a change in the standards. Can they still do that? Which I have no problem with as long as I see what they want to do.
Yes. So what,
Also appeal your decision.
well, no, your recommendation is going to go to council. And then council can do, obviously, it's a report that goes to council and they do with it.
I am
as they
fine
see
with
fit.
that. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody. We can make a. I'm trying to get this thing moved in a way that I'm comfortable with what I'm committing all these people to.
absolutely. So if we struck that section that amends the development standards, lot sizes, setbacks, et cetera.
I want to use what,
Yeah, the site design and development standards.
what was your term? No,
that's
the
still-
current zoning
So the, excuse me.
so the motion would be that I will make I can't. David makes a motion to approve the PDD conforming to all of Kerrville's zoning.
The PD as modified, striking the site design and development standards as proposed.
That's not what I'm saying.
Then I'm not clear. Keep going.
What I'm saying is I would make a motion to approve the PDD contingent on all of Kerrville's zoning regulations be followed. No modifications. No changes in standards.
I thought the uses were still okay, though. Article 2, the change to the uses was still okay.
The statement you made removes the land uses that they're proposing, removes the land use plan that they're proposing. No, that does not work. I can't.
So Article 3 is, in their proposal, is the stuff that you're talking about.
Okay, so then if we can strike Article 3, I would make a motion, we approve this PDD striking Article 3.
And so we're clear, so everyone understands Article 3 for each of those development districts that they're talking about, the R2, the mixed use, removes the amendments to lot size, lot width, setbacks, height, parking, and so on.
Short-term
land
rentals.
uses.
Short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals would be in the land use, that would be a separate section. We'll go back to that. That would allow this land use plan, based on the land use section, which is Article 2, with no site development amendments. So Article 2, if you want to take out the short-term rental unit, I can do that.
I want to do that.
Okay. So, what I have amended,
Comfortable with that?
the land uses that they're proposing for all districts, the agriculture and winery. For R2, it allows the guest house on the patio home and townhome. R2 estate has their higher standards. Mixed use allows the single-family uses. All development standard modifications have been removed.
I don't have an issue with, I'm
And
speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for
for
everyone.
the R2, for the mixed use, you were comfortable with the modifications?
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody clear on that?
You want to make that motion, David?
Motion is whatever he said, yeah.
Let me go over that one more time.
Over again.
And I'm gonna go over by section through this project. The development standards, Article 2, Section B, 1 is removed, that's the short-term rental units.
Okay.
Article 3A, as it relates to the R2 districts, is stricken, removing all the development standard amendments.
Okay.
Article 3B for the mixed use, those are included as presented.
Yep.
Okay,
That accomplishes what we're trying to do.
okay. Is that clear?
I don't think I can repeat it.
Drew,
One question.
okay. He'd like to ask you all.
Sure, sure.
The only question I have as to the short-term rentals, removing that section, would it be amenable to making some kind of restriction on that section, saying, we're allowing short-term rental by right, but only this percentage per block? or
No,
something?
we're dealing with that in the city right now. We had a workshop on that at 2 o'clock, and until we get the standards and the conditions, we want to do that. Doesn't mean that you can't come in and apply for a conditional use permit,
Yes,
which
sir.
is what we're trying to tighten up.
Right.
But we don't want, because what happens if we do that, the next developer comes along, he wants to do it, and
Yeah.
so,
Right, I mean, it was part of a larger plan for this kind of community that we were going for that, a different kind of community that would allow it by right.
Sure.
We thought, maybe there would be some kind of restriction where you say, okay, we allow it by right, but only 15% per block, but if that is a hot button issue right now, I understand.
it's a hot button issue in the city, yes.
Very hot.
Okay. Understood. Yeah, we're fine.
And it's
That
being
was- yeah.
considered, and we're trying to figure out those terms.
Only got on last time, right?
All right, we have a motion.
Do you want, I mean, if y'all are clear on the motion, I mean, do you have, or Drew can read?
He just went through it with me, and I think we're clear on it,
Everyone's
Mike.
clear.
Okay.
We just
You
need a
guys
motion
clear?
now.
Yeah, we have a motion.
Yep.
Now, do we have a
We have a
motion?
second.
Wait.
Wait,
Mr. Lipscomb said he made the motion, I reiterated
Okay.
the direction.
Okay.
He affirmed.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, thank you.
We're trying to do what we think is best for the city and what's best for the residents.
Amen.
That doesn't mean that you guys can't come back and ask for some particular change in standards. We can look at each individual standard, and I'm telling you, it's gonna get approved, but this gives us a little bit more control.
No, of course, and we appreciate y'all very much. Know that we've come into this in thoughtfulness and trying to respect the community and what y'all had asked for, and so, you know, we will take every step we can to
I
make
think
this
it's
right
gonna
for
be
y'all.
a good, I think it's gonna be a good project. It's just, I need to get comfortable, that's all.
Absolutely, understand and respect that.
And the only other thing on our agenda was election of vice chair, which I missed. We already did it in March, and it's Mr. Lipscomb, so we're done.
If we need to, I'll do it again.
No, I did find it. I appreciate it. I missed it when I was looking back, so.
We're done. Meeting adjourned.